Howdy. Welcome back to Dion Talk. This is going to be a nice short live stream that lasts as long as the questions do. Every Tuesday.
As long as the questions do.
As long as we don't have a bit of an echo. It's nice to be back home doing these live streams as long as I can keep the internet working. It seemed like I had trouble while I was in Florida. And I come home, and the first week I'm back here and I do a live stream, my internet didn't work very well. So I'm hoping we have sound and that we're on tonight and it's actually working. One of the problems that I have with financial independence is a lot of the people who talk about this type of content say things like, you need to be frugal. It's almost like a pet peeve of mine because I am definitely not somebody who wants to be frugal. I mean, yes, I don't want to spend extravagantly. I don't want a $6 million mansion in Malibu where the property taxes are more than most people make in a year. So I'm not looking to make so much money that I can live any lifestyle I want without ever looking at a price tag. But if I have to do things like ride a bike to work in order to save enough money to live, that's not something I'm interested in doing. If I have to meal prep and come up with some way to where I can make each meal cost $2 or $3, not something I'm interested in doing. I mean, I do try to save money by never shopping. I have not been in a store in, if you take out Lowe's, Home Depot, and like flooring stores, I haven't been in a store in 10 years. I haven't seen a commercial in 10 years. So I only buy things I want to, not something that somebody with a master's degree in advertising was able to convince me that I needed, that I'd never seen before, but I knew I just can't live without. So when it comes to financial independence, I focus more on the financial independence than the retire early. I want to make work optional, and I'm definitely going to stop working someday. And when I do that, I don't want to have to live frugally. I actually don't want to live frugally now while I'm trying to get to the point where I finally retire. There's a lot of different levels of financial independence. And if you talk to psychologists, they'll talk about being dependent and being independent. But in the FIRE community, the people who watch my content, there's 5 basic levels. And probably in different orders. The first one is barista FIRE. That's where if you work part-time, all of your living expenses are covered, so you can enjoy life. You can take a lot of vacations. You don't have to be at work every day selling your life 1 hour at a time. But you still have to work. There's Coast FIRE. That's where you invest early and enough to where that eventually, when you reach the age you want to retire, you won't have to work anymore. There's my least favorite, Lean FIRE. This is the one that's mostly talked about by channels like Beat the Bush, who has good content. And in the FIRE community, there's Mr. Money Mustache, who literally talks about living close to work, riding a bike, living minimal, eliminating expenses. People talk about the latte factor, getting rid of things like streaming services and actually lattes to eliminate expenses, because it is true that the more expenses we eliminate, the easier it is to reach financial independence. But do we actually want to live a life where we don't have streaming services, so we can't even have conversations with people who watch shows? We can't go for a latte. I personally, I raised 3 very picky kids, and there's 5 years between them. So 28 years of parenthood. So by the time the last child hit 18, the first one was 28. So 28 years of raising 3 picky kids. I never want to cook again in my life. I actually think I have more time saving by not cooking. I don't go to stores to shop. I don't make a list of things I want. I don't have to shop and spend the money. I don't have to transport the goods. I don't have to store the goods. I don't have to throw away the things that don't get used and become waste. Instead, my hack for food is to look at all of the restaurants within a 10-mile radius of my house, restaurants, bars, figure out their nightly specials, and plan my week around which ones has a $10, maybe $14 meal that will basically feed me twice. So yes, I'm not getting $2 meals, but I eat very healthy because I plan my route on which restaurants I'm going to go to based on the day of the week when there's a deal going that I like. My refrigerator has almost nothing in it. I don't have to cook. I don't have to clean up. So my time savings there is one of the ways that I'm happy to spend money at restaurants. I wouldn't want to give that up in order to reach financial freedom. If I had to, I would, but I don't want to. So the purpose of this video is to talk about reaching a financial freedom that doesn't mean we have to live like a minimalist. It means we don't have to cut out things we want to do. And there is that fat fire. You have barista fire, coast fire, lean fire, and the last one is fat fire, where you have so much passive income coming in, you can literally live whatever lifestyle you want. I think the lumberjack landlord is on the path to do this, so you can have whatever color of Lamborghini you want, and maybe a couple different ones in case you want different colors. My focus is just on financial freedom. The biggest difference between financial independence and financial freedom is financial independence means you don't have to work to cover your living expenses. Financial freedom means you don't have to watch the price tag on everything. So my goal is to get to financial freedom, not fat fi. I don't want to have so much excess, but I want to be able to do things without living like a minimalist, without having to meal prep or control my forms of transportation. There are some ways that people do this. And so here's some things to take notes on some options. My goal for financial freedom is to have an asset pay for every expense. So a lot of people will talk about, I want to retire and I make this much money so I can eat and I can go out and be entertained and stuff, but I can't afford healthcare. If that's the barrier, it just means you need another asset that pays for your healthcare. So I want an asset for every expense. If you don't want to invest in another asset, so more stocks, more dividends paying stocks, grow your business bigger, more rental properties, more units that would cash flow enough to cover the cost of healthcare, there is a type of geo arbitrage. In the United States, most healthcare for most people costs $600 to $1,000 per person in your family. Can cost more, can cost less, depending on how creative you are with doing this. Outside of the US, the same coverage is $60 to $100, pretty much a tenth of what it costs here in the United States. So one of the things I've done to not live like a minimalist is I have started taking 1 month vacations that this year I'm at least increasing to 3 months or increasing to 12 months because I'm going to quit my job somewhere between 3 years from now and tomorrow. So that's the timeline. I have healthcare covered by rental properties. So I'll be staying in the United States, but I could travel to a country like Colombia or Thailand, where I've been to both of those countries. Two things that were really important to me. First, the dollar is strong. So even though I'm financially free and don't have to worry about the amount of money I spent, I enjoy being able to tip more and spend more without thinking about it. And that it does meet that frugal nature that it took for the first few years to reach financial freedom. So in Colombia or Thailand, healthcare would be significantly less. Cost of living would be significantly less. And it's hard to find a country that still likes Americans, but I had good luck in those two countries. So maybe you know of another country you could go to. I would avoid countries where the cost of living is more without having the assets to pay for it. So geo arbitrage is one to cover the cost of living and the cost of healthcare, getting outside the United States. Not my plan. While I do want to travel to other countries for 1 to 3 months, I actually plan on remaining a United States citizen. I was in the Marine Corps. I'm a combat veteran from Desert Storm. I feel like I'm connected to this country and I don't want to just leave it. But it is an option. There are cities in other countries that are basically called expat cities, so expatriates, people who move to that country. Some of them, like Thailand, require that every year you at least go somewhere else, some other country, for 1 day to renew your passport. I don't know the rules, verify the dates. It's not something I plan on doing, so I haven't looked up yet. So my goal wasn't to reach financial freedom and live minimally. I have currently every streaming service I want. If there's a show that comes out on something that I feel like I'm going to want, I'll get the streaming service. I drive, I had a Ford Raptor, then a Corvette, then a Tundra, and now an F-250 jacked up with every extra. My next vehicle, I want to be the Tesla pickup. So I intend to have vehicles I enjoy. I am going to travel. I'm going to take vacations. Recently, I spent 2 months in Florida just going down there to see how much scuba I would enjoy and what the weather was like and see if I want to invest there. So I don't want to have that minimalist life where if you reduce all of your expenses, you house hack, you meal prep, you geo arbitrage, you can retire on $1,500 a month and be totally comfortable. That's not my goal. My goal was to have passive income coming in to where I could live the lifestyle that I want, which in the lifestyle I want is one that doesn't have a budget. In order to invest for financial freedom, one of the things that was really important to me is that I didn't have a budget. Part of the thing that I don't like about having a job at any point in my life, working anywhere, whether it was military, law enforcement, truck driving, CDL school, it doesn't matter. I don't like being told what to do. I enjoy working. Like, I want the option to work, but if you have to work, if you can't quit because you need that income, then that person can tell you what to do. And to me, writing a budget, having a budget, that's just me telling me what to do. And I don't want that either. So the big difference in reaching financial freedom and not having to live as a minimalist is to use these two words. And these two words mean a lot to me. For now. I house hacked to reduce or eliminate my largest expense. For now, not forever. I drove 15 to 20-year-old cars, had to have 3, hoping one of them would run well enough to make it to work. For now, not forever. I didn't have cable, didn't have streaming services for several years in the beginning of my FIRE journey. For now. When we first start out, if you're super organized and you can't house hack, I think a budget's going to be a really powerful tool. Instead of having a budget, I house hacked so that I didn't have to worry about the small expenses and made up for it with the large expense being at first reduced and now eliminated to where I'm being paid $2,500 a month to live where I do, which is a 1,200 square foot, 2-bedroom, 2-bath with a shed in my own garage, my own driveway. So house hacking doesn't always mean that you're renting out each room in your place and you have shared living space and it sucks. I mean, there's several different ways. You can do house with an ADU, so you don't even have shared living walls. So I did house hacking instead of having a budget. If you're not going to house hack, I suggest having a budget because controlling those small expenses will be what it takes to add up. To be able to invest, you want to increase your income, reduce your expenses, save and invest the difference until what you've invested supports your lifestyle. The more that you want to be able to do, the bigger lifestyle you want to have, it means the more investment you have to make, the more cash flow you need to create, the bigger business you need to grow, the more stocks you need to invest in, whichever path you've chosen to reach financial freedom. The first few years for most of us is the same. It's going to suck. You need to, for now, drive older vehicles. For now, don't eat out. For now, cut out latte factor, streaming services, things you can control. You need to figure out how to increase your income by either working overtime, changing companies to get a bigger pay raise, starting a side hustle, or developing and growing a side business as a side hustle, something to increase your income while you decrease your expenses to invest more. And then you have to think timeline. If a stock investor or a real estate investor said, and this is what I'm about to say is a factual statement, I have invested $320,000 and my cash flow this year, unless I add some units, because then it will be more, is set to be $168,000. That sounds like a great return, right? Like 320,000 invested, 168,000 in profit. But it took over 10 years to get there. 320,000 wasn't invested all at once. And a lot of times the investment from 8 or 9 years ago has had multiple years for rents to increase, interest rates to drop, to be refinanced to a better rate, add units to existing properties. One that was 2-bedroom, 2-bath each side is now 3-bedroom, 2-bath each side, adding exponentially to the rents over the years. So there's the factor when it comes to that return that people think about, where they say, I want to live on $40,000 a year. So if you use the Trinity study and you go by the 4% rule, it means you need to invest $1 million because you could take out 4%, which is $40,000. You're not going to invest $1 million all at once. As you invest, your portfolio will grow most years, and you continue to invest. In real estate, home properties go up, rents go up. The statistic I like to quote is, since we've started tracking the data in 1914, every 5 years as we've tracked the data, there has never been one 5-year period where rents decreased. The closest we came is when 2009, when the 2008 housing crash happened. In Class A markets, so super high-end, beachfront, whatever Class A means to you, rents dipped. It dipped enough to where it looked like there was a rent decrease for that 1 year. But over every 5-year period since 1914, there's never been a rent decrease. So for me, instead of investing in stocks or growing a business, I've chosen buy and hold real estate and then add the element of time. In the first 5 years, it is going to be very rare for somebody to invest enough money to develop enough cash flow to live without having to look at price tags. But if you do that for 5 years, control your expenses, increase your income, save and invest the difference into something that improves with time, cash flow increases, equity position increases. I haven't even done things like Michael Zuber from One Rental at a Time or Matt the Lumberjack Landlord to investors who have massive portfolios and are very successful. They've recycled capital. I've never cash out refinanced. I've never sold a property. I have not used a home equity line of credit. All I have done is starting with house hacking, save to invest and buy the next property over the period of 10 years. The first 5 years was very frugal. So when I say how to retire early, but not frugal, that doesn't mean I wasn't frugal in the beginning to get there. What I'm saying is in 2018, when I could have stopped working, I wouldn't have to eliminate anything from my life. Any vehicle I want, live almost anywhere except for maybe Manhattan, or sanity keeps me out of Seattle or something like that, and not just cost of living. But I pretty much can live anywhere I want. I don't have to geo arbitrage. I don't have to go to another country for healthcare. With just 16 rental units, in 2018, I didn't have that many, but I have reached financial freedom. Now I have 16 rental units. I don't have to live frugally. I can retire early and not be frugal. The difference is those first 5 years compared to the next 5 years look very different. I am going to get to the questions, and I appreciate everybody who comes by for the live streams. Each one, I'm hoping that sometimes a question comes up that sparks a conversation that helps somebody. Because one of the hard things about content creation when it comes to here's how you reach financial freedom, here's how I did it, here are tools and strategies that you can implement. Sometimes I think as a content creator, we assume people know things. And until a question is asked, we don't realize there might be a lot of people who haven't thought of that one thing. So one of the biggest things that I like to do when I'm talking to somebody, because getting a conversation going helps us know what we need to cover, is I will ask somebody, and I did this recently, I will ask them, how much money do you think you need to retire? And I pose the question in a way that kind of tricks the person. So right now I'm going to go to the comments, but what I would like you to do is to leave a comment telling me how much you think you would need to retire. And then when we come to here, we'll talk about that. Because for some reason, there's always some kind of delay in the comments. And I'm going to skip through the comments every now and then and see if I can block porn, because it comes up a lot. As you watch channels like mine, as we get bigger and bigger, there's more spam, more trolls. You're going to see things like, it's going to look like my name saying, hey, I'm on WhatsApp, send me $500 because I'm getting into a deal and I just need your help. I will never reach out to you and ask you to talk to me on WhatsApp. Those are all scams. Those are all bots. And sometimes they're very creative on how they make it look like it's the person's channel. So howdy, everybody. Milton, Million. I am in contract on a duplex to house hack with FHA 3.5% down. I just learned FHA mortgage insurance are higher than conventional. Expected $100 versus $265. So if you're under contract, it might be hard to find the lender now, but it is possible to find lenders that will do 5% down on a house hacked duplex. So that is one option. One of the drawbacks to FHA is, yes, mortgage insurance lasts the length of the loan. It doesn't go away when you reach a certain amount. One of the benefits to conventional is once you get to 22% equity, mortgage insurance is supposed to drop off automatically. With FHA, it stays permanently. So you either need to refinance, sell the property, or pay off the loan. Those are like your three options to get rid of mortgage insurance. But if it gets you into the property and owner occupying gets you a better rate, I'm okay with mortgage insurance. Because what we're looking at is how will that property look like, and here's how I run the numbers on a house hack. Run the numbers to find your yield like you did a 25% down payment. Because 3.5% down or 0 down VA, it's very easy to look like you have a good return, even if you don't have much cash flow. Your yield will look good with a really low down payment. So I like to run it as a 25% down payment because you're not trying to figure out how much you're making. You're trying to figure out apples to apples, if I'm looking at these 5 properties, which is the best one to pursue. And then to calculate the yield on a house hack, the next thing I like to do is to take the house hack out of it. Think next year, after I've moved out and all of these units are rented out, this is what the cash flow would be. Would that give you the yield to make the house hack worth going for? And you need to know what the area average yield is in your area, and then be trying for deals that are a little better than that. So with your mortgage insurance, you can calculate what your yield will be to determine if it's a good deal or not. And yes, conventional is often the better way to go, but sometimes FHA is the only option. So congratulations. Let me know how it goes. Michelle, howdy. Looking forward to today's live after I rehabbed a stove that replaced your 20-year-old stove. I'm frugal unless it is about travel and spending on things I like. For me, exactly. Especially now, I'm very much enjoying traveling and creating memories. To me, that's more important than stuff. I don't have an RV, quads, side-by-sides, Sea-Doos, or any of those kind of toys. I would rather go and rent those things. I am a gamer, and there's probably $15,000 worth of gaming equipment if you ever saw my stuff. But that's now. Those first 5 years, that's not when that kind of stuff happened. Loco Eddie, howdy. Wish more people understood the concept of deferred gratification. How do we teach it to younger family members without coming off preachy? You can't. No one can hear a word you're saying until they're ready. And what I've found, the best way to get people to listen to you is to live a life they want to mimic. You know, the highest form of compliment is to copy somebody. So if you're living very frugally to get to financial freedom, it's going to be very hard to convince a younger person that this is how you do it. As you reach financial freedom, believe me, those first 5 years when I was driving old cars, and they were so bad, I was a police officer and I used to come in, the other officers would mess with me. They called my cars rolling PC. Like, you just see a car that old, you have probable cause to pull it over. They probably don't have insurance. They probably don't have it registered. They probably have warrants. I mean, they were that old cars. At that point in time, for those first 5 years, people thought I was, my brother, who's financially free with 10 paid off rental properties, thought I was stupid. Called me, our family, a familial term of love in our family. He called me a moron because I had mortgages. I was investing differently than him. Once I reached financial freedom and he saw growth was more than his, cash flow was more than his, financial freedom could be more than his, I'm not a moron anymore. So to get someone younger than you to listen, I think the best way is to live a life they want to ask. You want them to approach you and say, how'd you do this? How can I do this? You can turn them on to things like Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which is a book. Not everybody does that. So you can turn them on to Audible. You can understand if you're talking about a younger family member, you need to look at the way people learn. So I run a truck driving school. We have students from 18 years old to 84 years old. That's the spectrum that we've got. Some need the book and a highlighter and repetition. Some need apps to practice questions on. A person, close to my age or older, is probably watching more long content on YouTube and listening to audiobooks. A person significantly younger is probably starting to get their information on short 10 to 15 minute videos or 1 minute videos on TikTok. So I would introduce them to Millennial Mike, Minority Mindset, old Graham Stephan from more than 2 years ago, old Meet Kevin from more than 2 years ago. Those type of videos that was short content, somebody closer to their own age, presenting the information in a format that person's probably going to retain. Talking about it isn't going to do it unless they approach you with questions. No one can hear a word you say until they're ready. That's how I would do it. And a master Jedi mind trick that I've pulled off with my son was he would never talk to me about finances. As he grew up, he knew I was very financially not well off. Like I was very poor. We were very poor as a family. So why would he ever come to me for financial advice, which is smart? Because one of the biggest mistakes most of us do is we go to our peers for financial advice, and 98% of the people on the planet really never reach financial freedom. So most of our information is coming from people who haven't done what we want to do. But once I reached financial freedom, instead of going to my kids and saying, hey, I've figured out this cheat code to wealth, I understand how we can make work optional, I made a YouTube channel and my son watches it. And every now and then he'll come up and ask me a question and he understands it because he just watched the video. But it was a video with content that I had to research for 3 days. So we actually have those conversations now. So I'm not saying make a YouTube channel. I'm saying figure out how to communicate in the format that the person that you're trying to impact would learn the easiest with. It's a good question. Dividend Dave, howdy. And everyone that's interesting me on, ask my lender about that too. Okay, so I was emailed a question and I'm putting this up in this to answer it. Howdy, Don. So I'm going to put and I say this in my live stream, so apparently people in Futureland get a little confused. I say I'm going to put my email in the chat. I was talking about the live chat, so I will do that now. But now I know to go back and put a comment in the regular comment section with my email so people can find it. But the question is today, and for the night, the live stream, can a person use a 1031 into an owner-occupied house hack type of investment? Can the two work together, or do they have to be used separately? The answer is yes and no. You can absolutely use it for a house hack. You can buy a place that you're going to live in, especially if it's a small multifamily or a house with an ADU. What you can't do is benefit from owner financing or use an owner-occupied loan. It has to be purchased as though it was going to be a rental, but no one who cares who's going to live there until later when they look at your debt to income ratio to buy more in the future. Yes, your rental income will be a factor. So I purchased a fourplex. I could have purchased it with 1031 funds, but I would not have been able to use an owner-occupied loan. I would not have been able to get that lower interest rate or lower down payment. It would have to be purchased with a investment loan because it's like for like, investment property to investment property. So there is a little bit of confusion here. A lot of people say you can't use a 1031 on an owner-occupied property. You can't use a 1031 on a property that is benefiting from owner financing. But you can use it on a property that you are going to live in, because you could buy a 300-unit apartment complex and then move into one of the apartments. That's still something you can purchase with a 1031 exchange. So that can be done all the way down onto small multifamily house with an ADU, possibly on a single family house, but that's definitely something I would clarify with your 1031 company first. It's easier to justify saying this is an investment. I'm just going to live there if it's a small multifamily. So yes and no. Howdy, Don. Howdy, Mac. When you've done your own house hack, do you put 5% or 20% down with a conventional loan? How do you decide? Thanks. Love all the content. Thank you. So for me, the determining factor in the beginning when I did the first duplex house hack is I did 5% down because it took me 2 years to save up the down payment. So if I tried to save 20% down, I probably would still be saving. And now instead of 300,000, that duplex is 550,000. So I'd still be saving. So the first house hack to get that reduced largest expense or eliminated largest expense, I would do a smaller down payment to get it started. Since then, and the income snowball has kicked in, I have purchased my properties with 25% down, or my house hacked fourplex was with 20% down, because I wanted a better equity position. If interest rates are really, really, really low, which they weren't really low yet, they were in the 4s and 5s when I bought that, it makes sense to have a bit of a down payment. When interest rates dropped to 2.53%, I think I would have financed as much as possible to lock in that low interest rate debt, because it was below normal inflation, let alone the, I think, double-digit inflation we've been seeing now. Then it comes down to your overall loan portfolio. In the beginning, I was trying to generate cash flow. Now what I'm trying to do is maintain an equity position. I want to be gaining equity on as much as possible, but while still having a leveraged position that I can handle a downturn with. I want 30% equity so that if prices ever dropped and I had to sell because of any life emergency in my own life, I wouldn't have to write a check to lose an asset. So I don't ever want to be over 70% leveraged across the board. So currently I'm a little bit less than 50% leveraged. So my next purchase I'm going to buy with a down payment. My next one after that, I'm going to use my VA loan and do a 0 down on at least $1 million fourplex, which will make that property 100% financed and bring my overall leverage portfolio up to probably 60 or 60 something percent leverage. So I won't go above 70. but I've saved my VA. One of the reasons I didn't want to use my VA loan is because I didn't want to have 100% leveraged property. So your portfolio determines which one I'd want to go. Interest rates help determine which one you want to go. And your savings, your ability to save, helps you determine which one you want to use. So it's kind of very unique to your situation in the current market that you're investing based on the rest of your portfolio. So at least 3 factors there that you're going to roll into it. Howdy, Clinton. Travis, howdy. How do you figure out estimated property tax when running a deals number? Howdy, Indy, and Nathan, and Hypno, and Tiffany, and Jay, howdy. So to figure out the cash, what you do is you want to look at your county tax assessor's website for the county that you live in or that you invest in. And you figure out what percentage of property value that or property buildings value, or however they're going to run it off the value of your property. Some will do 1%, some will do 1.5%. And the mistake that a lot of people do is they look at the listing and they see the current property taxes. Those are the taxes based on the last time it sold, with small incremental increases that the county tax assessor assumed to be accurate. When you buy the property, you create a factual current event of that property being sold for an amount, which gives the county tax assessor a new, often larger amount to base the taxes on. So your purchase price times the percentage that county uses to calculate your local property taxes would be what I look at when I run the numbers on the next property, because they are usually going to go up. In California, I think there's Prop 13, which is, yes, when you buy it, it resets to purchase price, but then I think your property taxes stay there until you sell. Not sure how that works. It sounds like one law that finally went in owner's direction for California. I know that in places like Washington State and Texas, taxes reassess annually. So it is something to understand the prices, the property value, and the percentage that they're using for the county that you invest in. Laura, good evening. Howdy. And my chat moved, which is great. I appreciate that. Tennessee Tweety, howdy. Mandy, howdy. Pallavi, howdy. ML, hi Dion, I'm currently screening a possible tenant and wanted to know how you go about it. So tenant screening. On my channel, I have a video called Tenant Screening 101, which breaks down the nuances of it. For me, how tenant screening goes is I use apartments.com to list my units. And I do like to have 1/3 military, 1/3 Section 8, or 1/3 working or retired. So depending on what kind of unit I want to fill, it would be illegal to run an ad saying I want military only, Section 8 only, or working only, right? But I control where I advertise. So if I want a military person to go, I will go on base and I'll put a listing up with my unit and the link, the description of the property and address to look up. If I want Section 8, I call the housing authority and I let them know the link. For working retired, I just put it on apartments.com. Wherever I'm going to advertise, it's going to take them to a link on apartments, which you can make public or private. Apartments.com is free for the landlord. The tenant, the applicant, words are hard, pays a $45 fee. I used to use cozy.co, which was purchased by apartments.com, and it used to be a little bit less, but now it's $45. They run the person's credit, so you get a credit report, so you can look at credit history and their current scores. It does an evictions check. I believe for the state you're in, it might not check other states. And it gathers the work information from the applicant. So to me, it's very important not to take the work information from apartments.com and then call to verify. So apartments doesn't call and verify. I'm going to call and verify, but I don't want to do it with the information gathered from apartments, because that is information from the tenant. So it'd be very easy for them to give you their friend's cell phone number and say, hey, for the next 3 weeks, you're McDonald's and I'm the manager, right? I want to find out where they're working. I then Google the name of the business, find a number to call, ask for HR. So I don't ask for the manager that they listed, and I don't call the number that they gave. I call the company. My most recent one was somebody who worked for the post office, was moving to the area. So Googled the post office, called them, found any manager, verified he was working there. So verified, all I care about is that they work there, not what they make. I've never asked or cared what someone makes, but that's how that looks for me for tenant screening. I generally, and I do this as law enforcement, and I don't go anywhere not armed. So I don't know if I would do this with you unless you have somebody go with you for safety concerns. I generally like to meet at the person's current residence to sign leases, because how they treat where they're at now is how they're going to treat when they move in. trying to think of anything else with tenant screening. Try to be as legal as possible. Don't look at the number of kids. Don't look at their age. Don't look at married, single. Don't look at political leanings. Anything that someone else can say that you rented to them because they're a same-sex couple, and then you denied someone else, or you rented to them because they're not a same-sex couple, and then you denied someone else. Make sure all of the things that can be used to discriminate aren't factors that you use. Some areas don't let you do a criminal background check. I don't check anyways. I will put in the listing, the school is X number of feet from a school, just so that people don't waste their time applying if they can't live there legally. So know your local laws too on what you can and can't ask. But think of it as a job interview. You can't ask religious things. You can't ask political things. You can't ask family, kid things. Tenant screening is very similar to that. Julie, howdy. In the middle of 3 renovations and a re-roof, and I end up sick as a dog with COVID. This is not convenient. No, but it does give you a good reason to handle everything over the phone, so you don't have to go in person. That sounds like a lot of work. I have 2 tenant turnovers coming up. First one's in a while. One purchased a house and one is moving out of the area. So I don't know what kind of rehabs I'm going to be doing. I've never actually done a rehab. So that doesn't sound like fun. Hope you get better. Jack, howdy. When you're doing the work, how do you take into account the potential near future large expenses like older water heaters and maybe a midlife roof? Or do you just rely on your 10% repair adjustment? And ta-da, you're here, Rob. Howdy. So in the first year or two, it's going to feel like it's out-of-pocket expenses. So you can almost count it in your cost to acquire to make sure if you're buying a property and the roof only has 3 years left, I would add that to your cost to acquire. As you've built up your reserves and your portfolio grows, so your reserves get bigger, that money, for me, would come out of the reserves to handle bigger expenses like that. And then the reserves get refilled with that 10%. And I do 5% for vacancy. I factor that 15% together to refill the reserves. When I had a few properties, I kept around 10,000 in reserves. That was enough to handle a water heater or a roof or a couple months without rent. As my numbers grew above 7, so they're at 16 now, I do 30,000 in the reserves. But that 10% gets bigger too, or 15%. It's like $3,000 a month now goes into an account when I have those repairs. And what I have now is I have a handyman that's going to handle this one tenant turnover that I have coming up at the end of this week. And then if they don't have any work, I'm literally going to have them go to each property and check the water heaters. Anything over 8 years old, I'm putting the water heater in, so I don't have a problem in the future. And that will just be part of regular maintenance expenses. Those expenses do not impact cash flow. I had a live stream once where I talked about rental expenses do not impact cash flow because your reserves and the money you set aside for repairs, maintenance, and vacancy will cover that. It just feels like it in the very beginning because you're going to dip into your reserves more to where it feels like you're spending the money. Once you have the cash flow from rentals to fill up that account, you get to the point where you start to look forward to things. Like, I want to put a roof on a property because now I have a 30-year or 40-year protected asset that I don't have to worry about for at least 30 years. I'm looking forward to having water heaters replaced so that I know I'm not going to have to worry about these for another 8 years. And it's not my money. Tenants are paying for these upgrades or these repairs out of the rents because 10% of gross rents and 5% of gross rents, for vacancy and repairs and maintenance is put together. So 15% of gross rents is going into the fund to do these repairs. When the reserves are full and there's no repairs to do, then that money doesn't go to your living expenses. It doesn't go to your cash flow to make your life better. It goes to the investment fund to make the next investment down payment happen sooner, so that when you do have to use that money to refill the reserve or to pay for expenses, it's not taking money away from your living expenses. It's taking money from how soon the next investment happens. Paula, howdy. Tennessee Tweety, for an owner finance scenario, what features should strive for Example, request the deed be in your name while paying. For an owner finance scenario, what features would you strive for? So the seller's going to get a note and you're going to register it with your county. You want to do everything legally. That's why I would owner financing still have an agent or hire a real estate attorney. So everything is legal and registered with the county, just like a regular purchase, like if you were using a loan. I think the deed goes in your name at point of sale on owner financing, just like a bank sale, but they're in first position with their lien, which is the note that's registered with the county, which then becomes a financial instrument that they can sell. So just like your lender will. If you go and get a bank loan, they're going to sell it usually within 2 to 3 days to somebody else on a secondary market to carry that. It's actually not very different. And that's why with me, with a seller financing deal, I wouldn't want just me and the seller to try to negotiate and do all the paperwork for that. I would want a professional, an agent, or a real estate attorney to earn their money and make sure everything is done right. And then let me see here. People put in their amounts. So 6,500 a month, 10K a month, 4,000 a month. So good. So this is most of the people who watch my content. You understand the trick question of how much do you need to retire? You should try that with the people in your circle, whether they're your financial friends or not, people at work. Just ask people randomly, hey, I'm just curious, how much do you think you would need to retire? Because most people who haven't thought the process through will come back with a number. 1 million, 5 million, 10 million. They're going to say, this is the number I need to retire. When in reality, in order to make work optional, so we don't have to sell our lives 1 hour at a time to pay for our expenses, it's a monthly revenue. How much money coming in every month that you don't have to work for. That's the amount you need to retire. So it can be done with me. Financial freedom happened with $320,000 invested. I have recycled cash flow from the properties. So the overall investment into my properties is a little over $600,000. But out of my W-2 and savings over 10 years, I've invested $320,000. Cash flow is $14,000 a month. That's enough. I could have retired in 2018. So I have reached financial freedom by investing $320,000. No one, when I ask, how much do you need to retire, is going to say $320,000. They're going to say something like $1 million, 10 million, 5 million, or $4,000 a month. I mean, this is the right answer. How much per month do you need to not have to work? And so that was what I was looking for, is you guys understand a monthly income is what makes work optional, not an amount. If it was an amount, over 70% of lottery winners wouldn't file bankruptcy within 3 years of hitting the lottery. That's a statistic that shows that large sums of money doesn't mean you can make work optional. You need to put the money to work in such a way that it's generating the amount every month that it takes you to pay for all of your living expenses. And we get, that's a freedom number. Dividend Dave. To answer your 1031 question, Dion, I'm not saying anything stating you can't do a 1031 exchange into a owner-occupied investment property, as long as you're exchanging from one rental to another. Right. If you're owner-occupying, though, a single-family house might not qualify as a rental. That's the one thing where it still has to be a rental, because owner-occupied properties is not an investment. So if you're using owner-occupied lending, technically, it would have to be small multifamily so that you have rental units. You might be able to argue it. I would definitely reach out to a 1031 company because it has to be processed by a third party, a 1031 company. And I have seen them say, you can't 1031 into the house you're going to live in. But if you're going to live in a small multifamily, that's still a rental. So it's like for like. It's just the owner-occupied single family that tends to be an issue. I think Todd Baldwin would be able to justify it and say, this is my strategy. I buy 4 or 5 or 6 bedroom houses and I rent out the other rooms. This is the income generated from those houses while even I live there in this one room. It's an investment. So I think that's an option too. But you'd have to have the story to back it up. And I'm just random guy on YouTube. Definitely consult your 1031 company would be my suggestion. Ultimate bargain. Howdy. Can't find anyone more random than Dividend Dave. Lead by example. Nice. Yeah. Galen, howdy. There is no such thing as adequate cash flow. Oh, no, and I'm pretty sure, Dave, it wasn't an insult. I think he was being silly. So there is no such thing as adequate cash flow when you do this one next logically. The freedom number, a lot of people get very confused and they think, how much am I going to need to spend next year, 5 years, 10 years from now? Instead of thinking, I have the data. Let me look at the last 6 months, pull out my bank statements, my credit card statements, my everything that I've subtracted expenses that I've had in the last 6 months. This is what it cost me to live my current lifestyle. You want something that hedges against inflation. So either rents increase or a portfolio size grows or a business grows. But that's your freedom number. And this is something I get when I go to Rich Dad, Poor Dad seminars. I've go to the free ones. I've never gone to the pay $3,000 for a weekend or whatever when they try to upsell you. But the meetings almost always start the same. And this is how I want to start if I go to another, like I just did the Northwest Action Summit or as a keynote speaker, if I go to another real estate meetup, I want to start it this way. Ask the group, how much money do you need? Okay, what would you do if you had that much money? So you have cash flow. Some people have said they need 4,000, 10,000, 5,000 a month, 6,400 a month. The presenter says, well, what would you do if you had that? And some people say, well, I'd probably want more, or I'd get the nicer car, I'd take the bigger. Okay, what if you had twice that? And they just keep growing the number and they just keep adding to it. And people say, well, I would travel the world. I would take more expensive vacations. I'd take cruises and whatever. And they just keep adding to it until people finally realize, okay, so as my cash flow grows, as it gets bigger and all of my possible needs are met, I'd help someone else. So if your goal is to help other people, and the more money you have coming in, the more resources you're going to have to help more people, I agree. There is no such thing as adequate cash flow. The more money you make, the more money you can help. Christoph, howdy. No, I said I like to keep your properties at least 10 miles apart. Can I ask why or what reasoning behind this? Thank you. So most of my properties are 10 miles apart or more, all within an hour's drive. I have 2 that are 7 miles apart. And it was while my portfolio was small. As the portfolio grows, this becomes a little less important to me. I would rather have 5 duplexes spread out 10 miles apart than one 10-unit apartment complex, because a 10-unit apartment complex means everything's close together. So what if that's close to a base or a port or a college or a hospital? And let's say it's close to the college. And then we have a pandemic and everybody does remote learning from home and you don't have tenants, or the port closes, or there's a BRAC meeting and the base closes down. Your sources of tenants are limited the closer together your tenants live. So if you have 5 duplexes more than 10 miles apart, one's by the port, one's by the college, one's by the hospital, one's by the base. And so you're more diversified. So I diversified properties, and then I diversified the tenant base by doing, like I talked about earlier, 1/3 military, 1/3 Section 8, 1/3 working and retired. So a pandemic, prolonged government shutdown, stock market crash, or any of the things that could happen don't impact my entire portfolio. As the portfolio grows, I wouldn't mind right now if I had 2 duplexes right next to each other, because it's 2 out of, at that point it would be 18 units. So 4 of them would be close together. I can handle that if that is financially impacted by something changing in that local area. When I was first starting out, I didn't want to have like 3 properties all on one street. One big change to the economic drivers in that area, and you can't make your payments. So all diversified, all spread out with different tenant bases. I feel like I'm ready for anything, and so I sleep like a baby. And not the kind that wakes up screaming every hour. North Colorado Dawn. Howdy, Brian. Howdy. Thanks so much for looking. The inspection report I emailed you, I'm getting excited to find out and close on my first deal. If I were to go through with my current offer, I would cash flow $900 a month. Awesome. Nice. Congratulations. Adam, congratulations on 10K. Thank you. Appreciate that. CJ in John, Texas. Howdy. Yeah. North Colorado Dawn, have you been to Belize? $2 Belize dollars equal $1 US. I have not been to Belize. Really considering moving there after you finish your 4plexes. Yep, geo arbitrage is a thing. I don't know about moving to Thailand. I like to scuba dive, so I'd like to probably go live on one of the islands there for a while, but I don't know. I'm gonna have to satisfy the passport thing of going out a day or whatever. I still self-manage the properties. And that might be the motivation that it finally takes to go to property management. I think I'm going to just chase the endless summer. So I'm going to be in Washington for at least a full weekend when we have summer here, and then I'll travel to Arizona or Florida or Thailand or somewhere where there is a warmer climate for the colder months in Washington. David, howdy. Mr. Frugal. Nice. Million. On this duplex property, an inherited tenant pays $855 lease is month to month versus an area average of $1,650. Is there a month to month on Section 8? How do you approach a binder strategy with Section 8? So binder strategy works really well with Section 8 because it's a government employee who really can't make decisions unless they can justify it to their boss. So if you call the Section 8 program and you have a conversation, you're not going to get anywhere. You want to email the counselor that handles your tenant's case file. Here's the area average rents. And it's only going to work if area average is above what you're trying to go to, just like when you have the binder strategy. Sometimes you realize the binder strategy could work both ways. I buy places where the rent is usually below area average rents. And in this case, those numbers you listed off, they're very much below area average rents. When you go to the Section 8 program, remember, they're only going to care about bedroom count. They're not going to care if it has a shed, a garage, a pool, a sun tanning room. It doesn't matter. All the extras, anything that you could put in there, just bedroom count. So that 1,650 that you're finding area average has to be based on bedroom count. Send them in some examples with a map saying this is how far it is, this is how many how many bedrooms it has, this is what the area average is. I want to increase, and then name a small percentage. So the difference with the tenant binder is first talk to the tenant. Let them understand. Let them be involved in the process. Then you email the agency, the counselor for the housing program, the housing authority, or the nonprofit in your area that runs the housing program. Here's several examples of the area average that they can then take and show their boss. I just did this about 6 months ago. They told me 1,800 is the most we'll pay in that area. That's what we could pay, and even that's a bit of a stretch. I found a bunch of the 2,400 in the area, and I said, here's the area average rents. I'm raising to 2,200 on this day, or I am not renewing with your client. And they emailed back and they said, hey, that's great. 2,200 a month sounds perfect. And they signed like it was no problem. Give them articulable facts that they can show their boss why they're making a rent adjustment. They're supposed to be at area average. You're doing the work for them. They're not going to go and look up area average rents to make an adjustment above what is their currently agreed upon maximum number for those number of bedrooms. But when you do the work for them with something they can verify right off of Apartments or Zillow or Trulio or Redfin or Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace with current rentals in the area for that amount, then it's easier to justify. And anytime you deal with a state agency, emails, because they see it and their boss sees it. If it's a voicemail or a phone conversation, they can disregard it or forget it. It can actually be a mistake and they could forget it, or they could just ignore it. But they can't do that with an email because their boss saw it too. 100,000 a year. It's decent. That's good. That's a good number because it gives you a monthly if you just break it down. So howdy Ant, howdy Adam. We're diving the sound. Yes, but not very well. The visibility here is 10 feet on decent days. And then when you're in an area where there are basically octopus bigger than us, I like to be able to see. So that's why I like to travel. It's really why I went to Florida. And I stayed in Cape Coral where the waters aren't very clear. You go a bit north of there or a bit south of there and the waters clear up pretty decent. Thailand waters are beautiful. Colombia waters were good, but a lot of sharks. The only sharks we saw in Thailand were whale sharks, and they're like a big cow. So, and then Ultimate Bargains took a message back to make me lose sleep tonight. Scott, howdy. Dion, I finally made a live. Can only assume the TPS stapler is from Office Space, your favorite movie. It is from Office Space. I run a nonprofit. I run a truck driving school, and then I founded a nonprofit called Transportation Placement Services. We help people find jobs in trucking outside of the truck. So HR, IT, operations, logistics, forklift, everything you can imagine that's not driving. The name and the stapler is just because I want to receive TPS reports. So yes, nerds live here. I'll burn this place down. David, are you doing a big celebration for 10,000 subs? Congrats. I am taking a cruise. It's going to be my first one, and I've been back from a 2-month vacation for almost 2 weeks now. Humans are not meant to work this much. This is stupid. So I'm going on a cruise. We leave the 25th. So what is that? 2 weeks from now? Yeah, about 2 weeks from now. It's the 10K cruise, basically. That's what I'm going to call it. I'm going to try to do my live stream, but I don't know what the Wi-Fi is going to be like, if there's even going to be cell service, because it's Alaska, and we'll see. I'll have videos that release that week, so I won't take like a week off. But yes, enjoy the journey. Something I take from one rental at a time. Michael Zuber, he says one of his big regrets is that he doesn't have a picture in front of him in front of his first like 8 properties, that he can go back and do it now, but he doesn't have a picture of 30-year-old Mike in front of the property and 37-year-old Mike in front of the property. So I did that. I took pictures in front of each property after closing. I've used them in most of the videos. I have some drone footage I've used in videos. And I had all that time where I didn't take vacations. It's the first cruise that I've ever been on. So that's my celebration. Thank you. Ultimate bargains. There is no such thing as a final destination on your journey to financial freedom. True. Instead of saying that 10,000 per month is all you need, say that your monthly passive income should increase by a greater 500 or 10% every 6 months. Use an attorney, not a realtor, to draft your legal documents. Good suggestion. Julie Anderson, 10K. When did you make 10K? About 8 o'clock last night. Not that I was watching, trying to catch the screenshot, which I did. I got a screenshot of it and then it went to like 10,020 in like 4 minutes. I kind of agree with you, Ultimate Bargains, that you want to get you want to have your per month, but then you want it to increase too. For me, I don't know that I'm going to continue buying real estate. When I quit work, I might buy one once in a while if the best deal pops up. I might actually take cash flow and eliminate debt, because I have 16 units and 14,000 a month in cash flow. If I can have 15, 14, 12 units and more cash flow, that still scales with inflation. I'm just built different than the lumberjack landlord and Michael Zuber, who want those massive portfolios that just keep growing. I wanted work optional, and I want to enjoy life. And for me, I don't know that takes continued growth. It's going to be a weird flip to switch in my head. The hardest thing to do is to go from, people call it frugal, but you live a certain way so you can save and invest the difference, to where you flip the switch one day and now you're not saving for the next investment. You're not working to make money. You're taking the money to live on. As long as that is, in my opinion, 4 or 5 times what it costs you to live, I don't know that it requires purposeful growth. Whereas it should be in an asset class like rentals, where rents increase, mortgages get paid down. Eventually, mortgages are paid off. Ultimate Bargains. Yes, I made 10,000 per month. Oh, I think she was talking about subscribers, but 10,000 per month. When did I hit 10,000 per month? I'm not sure. Per month, more than 20 years ago, but that was earned income. It feels weird to say this, but earned income sucks. I don't care if it's $100 an hour or $10 an hour. If you have to sell your life 1 hour at a time, you are not financially free. You can sell your life if you're financially free. You continue to work to make money if you want to. I have since 2018. But if you have to work, the dollar amount doesn't matter. It sucks. Andres, howdy. What is your explanation to the lender as to why you are looking to get your next multi? So the only time you need to have an explanation to a lender is if you have an FHA or VA loan and you're trying to use an FHA or VA loan again. If you have a conventional loan, no one will ever ask you why you're trying to acquire your next multi. You are growing a portfolio. That is the purpose of conventional loans. But the lumberjack landlord will talk about the strategy of 4-3-2-1. So if you buy a fourplex, lenders with FHA and VA will always let you move towards a single family house, or towards a larger single family house. So the easiest justifiable reasons are, I'm in a fourplex, I want to buy a triplex. So 4-3 duplex, 2 house, 1. you're moving towards a single family house. So that would be the easiest thing to do. If you're going from a single family to a duplex, it needs to be better school district. Here's the data to back it up. Closer to my work eliminates this much of a transportation expense. Or the duplex I'm in is a 3-bedroom, 2-bath each side, and the triplex I want to move to is a 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom each side. It's a bigger unit. So you can justify it with those things. I have never used FHA, and so far I have not used VA because I don't ever want to have to explain to a lender. I want to go, look, I qualify to borrow the money. The reasons are none yet, and here's the property I want to buy next. Give me my letter of pre-qualification. So they've never asked. So that would be how I look at that if I was using FHA or VA. Cash flow, Johnny. Howdy. What's up, real estate freaks? Alonzo, and then my chat moved. Howdy. On one of your previous videos, you said email you for your template that you send to your agents, but what email of yours? So I'm going to put it in the chat here, and then I will remember to put it in the comments and pin it. Always feel free to email me. If I ever don't answer an email within a few days, please email me again because I get a few. Jay Hayes, howdy. Have you ever considered investing in production farmland? The CRP programs that are available. It seems like a viable option. If you don't know, could you point me in the correct direction? I have not, and I haven't looked into it, and I don't know anybody who has to point you in a direction. So I would literally have to Google it to figure out. If you're talking about investing in a farm that someone else runs, maybe. If it was me, I'm the lazy investor. I want to buy rent-ready or already occupied properties that I don't have to do much work to, that have a tenant involved. So I haven't looked into that strategy. And I don't know of my friends if anyone that I know has done that either. So a question I cannot answer, or even direct you to a better answer than the interwebs. Sorry. I haven't looked into that. Jay Hayes, Dion, have you ever? Nope, that was the question I just read. Dividend Dave, where do you want to scuba dive most? I most enjoyed Thailand. I want to go back. A couple of factors. Warm water, can pretty much dive year round. Expenses are really low. A ton of aquatic life to deal with, and not many that are trying to kill you. Like, I don't want to dive in Australia because everything in that part of the world is trying to kill you and is creatively trying to kill you. So there are some other ones I want to try, but I haven't built a list of where to do that yet. And today's sponsor of the video is, of course, as usual, Alien Vodka, which you should try, who is not a sponsor of the channel and probably doesn't approve of me saying that every time. Oliver, howdy. Congrats on 10,000. Thank you. Do you know any lenders in Washington State offering 5% conventional on 2 to 4 multi? Owner occupied, possibly. I just put my email in the chat. Send that and I'll connect you. Asset based, I don't know. I still think they're above 5. Not much. And that's with buying down the rate, though. And not owner occupied, you'd be pretty close to 5 or a little higher, even with a conventional loan. But I can connect you with my lenders here in Washington that I'm working with. I like to give referrals to my lenders, agents, handyman, those kind of things. Anything I can do to help them generate business makes them more likely to want to work with me in the future. Jay Hayes, still considering the right buy box. Cheers. Thank you. It was time for a drink. Heineman family, howdy. During the first few months with inherited tenants, you're looking to make sure they don't call you with trivial things. Can you talk about what you consider trivial and excessive maintenance calls? I've only really had one tenant, one couple, a tenant. How do you singularize a plural? A couple that was tenants, only one, that I had to really educate and say, let me talk to you about fire, flood, and blood. Most of the tenants, I have a simple conversation explaining fire, flood, and blood. If you're going to have a conversation with me and those are the words involved, you're going to call me. If not, you're going to email or text, and I'll connect you with a handyman who can resolve the issue. Sometimes if it's really small, I'll say these exact words to the tenants when I'm meeting them. Sometimes if it's really small, a handyman might say, okay, cool, I will take care of that the next time I'm out there for either routine maintenance or something bigger breaks so that I can do it all at the same time. Because it's basically at least $100 just to get a handyman to the site, let alone do any work. So I don't want them going there for a $20 fix. But if they have to go there for a dishwasher swap and do a $20 fix, that's fine. So I kind of have that conversation with the tenants. The one young couple, it was, we found rat droppings. Okay, did you put down rat poison? Because rodent control is in the lease for tenants in my area and in our lease that we signed. The dishwasher wobbles. Well, did you look at the screw that goes into the top of the underneath the counter? Is that tight? Like super, super small things. I did go out and just have a conversation and explain. These are the things you're having fixed. These are the things that you could have taken care of. These are the things that I'm paying for that are then going to come out of your deposit. If you can either pay for this, like if you broke a window, that would be your expense. But if you break a window and don't have the money, I'm going to fix it, and then it's going to come out of your deposit. So just have an education with them. Anytime a tenant calls me with a noise complaint about another tenant, because I do have small multifamily, some have shared walls because there's not always a garage in the middle. I mean, I do have side-by-side units, but sometimes they're side-by-side. I go, let me get you the number for the non-emergency local police department because that's who handles noise complaints. That is not a landlord issue. That is a police issue. And if the police come here too many times, all these tenants are getting replaced. And that means you too. So that kind of wakes people up to they need to handle things in-house. What other trivial things can they call for? It's never really been an issue. The one tenant that I had to go and sit down and have him like a dad talk with, like, I get it, you're young, you don't know how most of this stuff works. Here's how a lease works. Here's what your responsibilities are. Here's what my responsibilities are. Most people understand. I have not had it, but I would watch for the person who, every time rent is due, they call for something that needs fixed, and they say something like, well, I could fix it and take $150 off the rent. Well, of course it's going to be broken then. No, you fix it. If it's possible, build a tenant for it because they probably broke it. An example was less than a month ago. No, just over a month ago. So it would have been the first of last month. Tenant calls, cabinet door fell off. What was your kid doing when the cabinet door fell off? I'll fix it, no problem. That's coming out of your deposit. So it's not an immediate cost now, but there's a note in the file that when this tenant goes, that much of the deposit's already used. Because the cabinet door didn't just fall off. The cabinet door was ripped off by a kid. And for the most part, these are adults you can actually just have a conversation with. One of the reasons I like to self-manage is property management companies aren't really good at doing those kind of conversations. They're very cut and dry because tenant turnover helps property management companies make money. They'll say things like, oh, I don't want a turnover because it's extra work. Well, it's extra revenue. So whether you're going to make money or lose money, or make money or have to do work, it's still part of their revenue package. See my video last week on the hidden cost of property management, which I will eventually have. I will actually someday have property management, just not today. North Colorado Dawn. I know this is late, but I would need $4,500 a month net to be almost there. Nice. I don't remember ever setting a freedom number. I remember realizing one time that my take home was $100 more a month than what I was making, what my take home was as a police officer. And I thought, and that was when I had a mortgage. So now I was making $100 more and didn't have a mortgage. That in 2018, I was like, wow, I have financial freedom like a year ago. I had never really put it together. Because here's how I look at financial freedom. And I should learn grammar. I should make a video on this. A lot of people talk about their savings rate. Top being 10%. If you're really focused and disciplined, you can get 20 or 30% savings rate. I think Michael Zuber talks about they dropped a lot of their expenses and got down to 50% savings rate. Your goal. So right now, you watching this video, your goal is a savings rate of 100% of your income. If you can't save 100% of your income, you're not financially free. You still need to work. So my goal was to create cash flow to cover my expenses and then save 100% of my earned income. If you're not saving 100%, you're not financially free. As soon as you can save every penny from your job and start to save some of the rent, I think I'm at about 75% saving the rental income now. Yeah, that's actually probably accurate. 75% of the rental income and 100% of the W-2 income and 100% of the other side hustles incomes for the next deal. It becomes so much money. It's more of a struggle to figure out what to do with the money than to save the money. Ultimate bargains. Question. If there is a serious economic downturn with recession, then would holding Section 8 properties with guaranteed rental income help, considering that in my experience, those tenants are terrible? In my experience, those tenants are great. Your property attracts the tenants, not the funding source. My criteria is still the same: 700 credit score, no evictions ever, Section 8 or not. So I have Section 8 tenants with an 831 credit score and a 790 credit score. I've never had issues because Section 8 tenants can lose a benefit. I've had other tenants where you have to have the conversation saying, you're in the military, right? I was in the military. I have your chain of command's number. If this issue persists, that's what I'm going to be talking to solve the issue. I've never had to say, I'm going to call this housing authority, because they're going to inspect. So your house has to look good enough for them to inspect anyway. So I've never had a problem with Section 8. I think you might be considering low-income housing. Low-income housing and Section 8 housing are very different animals. Low income means you have to make a low income. And if your income increases, you're not going to qualify for this. Section 8 is fixed income. Think disabled service member on a certain percentage, somebody with an L&I claim, special needs family members, something that says this is the amount of money that we can make. It's not going to change. So we qualify for much needed government programs to actually assist that person who don't want to lose the benefit, who take care of the property. Screen like you would any other tenant. I do think it's a good part of a recession-resistant portfolio to have some Section 8. I wouldn't want 100%. What happens if the program is canceled or defunded? I don't see it happening, but what happens if it is? We had a 60-something day government shutdown where Section 8 was on the brink of not paying. They've never had a time where they had a lapse in paying, but a long enough prolonged government shutdown could make no payment happen. So for me, I like to be diversified. 1/3 Section 8, 1/3 working or retired, 1/3 military. If I wasn't near a military base, I might break that up differently, say some college students, some traveling nurses, some whatever is a different amount of money that's not going to be impacted by an economic downturn. Most times in a recession, rents go up. People that lose houses through foreclosures because of lost jobs become renters. Renters don't usually go through evictions during a recession. They end up having roommates. They end up renting out rooms to friends or combining housing to be able to afford rent. So rents are stronger during a recession, but you need reserves. So right now, as we're thinking, we're probably looking at a recession. You should be considering strong reserves. You don't want to be over leveraged. So I wouldn't be looking at VA loans, rinsed and repeated 2 or 3 times to have 100% leveraged properties where if you miss one rent payment, you don't have the funds to cover it. So diversified property locations, diversified tenant base, and recessions can kind of be and this sucks to say because recessions suck, but it can be your friend. Let's like inflation. Who does inflation hurt? People that don't make a lot of money. Who does inflation help? Inflation helps people with assets. The value of the asset increases with inflation. It takes more dollars to buy the asset. The value on the asset really didn't change. The number of dollars that it took to buy it is what changed. And so we have this thing called a K-shaped recovery. So if you're at this certain point or higher, you're doing better during a recession. And if you're at this point or lower, the recession's impacting you worse. And see if I can say this without sounding incredibly arrogant, because that's not the goal. The goal is to say, here's why you should have cash flowing assets. Why I'm making this content to try to help you get you on the property ladder to get you to your next deal to make your portfolio bigger. Inflation is hitting, and it's whatever percentage. But let's say right now, everything is costing $1,000 more a month. You have fuel, insurance, whatever's going up. You're going to spend $1,000 more a month. If you make $4,000 a month, and it costs you $3,500 a month. Last year, you were able to save $500 a month. Not doing terrible, right? You have a savings rate. You're not going into credit card debt. But this year, if you make $4,000 a month because you didn't get the wage inflation that people are talking about, and you didn't change jobs to get more money, you're literally making the same amount as last year. You're now $500 in the hole every month. Okay, that sucks. This is why recession sucks. But here's why, and this is why I'm going to try not to sound arrogant. I'm trying to help everybody that's watching this now and in Futureland get to the same position. Right now, my cash flow from my rental properties is about $14,000 a month. I have a W-2 job where I make a decent income. I have side hustles where I make a decent income. So I save somewhere between $15,000 and $20,000 a month towards the next deal, right? From I live on $3,000 to $4,000 a month. Basically, I've pretty, I don't have a housing expense. I have paid off vehicle. I have a rental property that I call the vehicle property because that money is set aside for buying the next vehicle. So if everything costs me $1,000 more a month, instead of saving $18,000 this year towards the next deal, I'm going to save 17. Like, am I in any way financially impacted by inflation? Not to a recognizable degree, but that person who makes 4,000 and spent 3,500, they now either need to figure out how to make more money, develop a side hustle, which they should have been doing, or work overtime, or eliminate expenses. This is where you cut the cable. You don't take the vacation. You pack your lunches. You do whatever it takes to come up where you're not going into debt for that extra 500 because you were at 35 and we added 1,000. That's the important thing of having multiple streams of income when a recession hits, so that your standard of living is not impacted. The amount you're able to save towards the next deal might be a different number, but who cares? And who do you even feel it? I drive a diesel. It's $6 a gallon here in Washington, $5.50 to $6 a gallon, depending on where you go. And this is a conversation from a long time ago that I had with a friend. They were trying to tell me that I should not think about money because all you do is think about money. And yes, if you are focused on money for about 5 years, you never have to think about it again, because here's the story of me and that friend currently from a long time ago. This applied then and it's applying now too. They said, I would never want to do what you do, Dion, and focus on money and invest because you have to think about it all the time. And I said, really? Today, on my way home from work, I'm going to have to fill up my vehicle. On your way home from work, you're going to have to fill up your vehicle. On your way home, you have to sit down and look at the cost of fuel, how much you need in your tank, how much you can put in, and still have money left for your cell phone bill and your food bill and all of those expenses that you're going to have. You have to think about money to fuel your vehicle. Fuel could be $50 a gallon, $50 a gallon. And I drive an F-250 jacked up truck with a huge tank. I would not think about it. I would fill it because I know I need to drive however many miles I'm going to go to. I'd be thinking about that night or what I'm going to do. Think and focus about money for 5 to 10 years so that you never have to think about it again. So that when we do hit things like a recession coming, watch your friends. You know you're going to encounter somebody in your family or your circle that's going to need help because they're not prepared. The Three Amigos did a video last week on how to prepare a friend or family member for a recession that doesn't invest. And in there, we had some ideas on what we could help them with. Part of that is being prepared to where you don't become a burden, especially when it comes to our kids. Most people are thinking, I get this all the time. This is kind of an overshare. You're single. You're going to grow old and be alone. I'm like, I don't need a person next to me when I get old. I'm going to need professional medical care because I've seen my kids take care of pets and I don't want to be that pet. Like I said, that was an overshare. Preparing for a recession has been what we've been doing. Diversify your streams of income. And BiggerPockets says this, and some people don't agree with it, but they say don't retire on cash flow. And they kind of stop there to like draw your attention. But really what they're saying is if you need $3,000 a month in cash flow and you get to $3,000 a month in cash flow, don't retire. That's too narrow of a margin. If you need $3,000 a month in cash flow to retire and not work again, I'm not saying $3,000 a month in cash flow, then retire and then go do a job you enjoy and not worry about money. That's an option. But to retire and not work again, because I'm currently doing the last job I'm ever going to have in my life. When I quit this job, I am retired. I'm not going to work for someone else in a W-2 position again. If I needed $3,000 a month, that would mean I would want my cash flow to be $9,000 a month before I would pull that trigger. At least 3 times the multiplier. I'm at almost 5 times the multiplier now. Haven't pulled the trigger on that yet because I love my job, but between 3 years from now and tomorrow, somewhere in there, I will stop working. See if I lost my spot. And oh yay, we got porn spammers showed up. How did that happen? I thought I blocked all them last time. At least they waited till later in the live stream to show up. I lost my spot, sorry. Okay, so sound snags. Howdy. Hi, Dion. Doing my first rent back for a few months to the seller of a duplex I'm buying now. Any advice on how to set up the short-term lease, on how to handle them between close and their departure? So I would do a month-to-month lease. And if possible, if you're still under contract, how I would negotiate a rent back is I would do a holdback. Take something significant, $20,000 or $30,000 from the sale that goes into escrow. So you don't have it, seller doesn't have it, title company has it. When their timeline comes up and they have moved out, so they don't force you to go through some type of eviction or stretch it out, then the seller gets that remaining amount of money. So for a rent back, I would do a holdback. If you're out of contract and you've closed, it's not really an option to add that now. Month-to-month lease to me would be preferable because it gives them less long-term options as far as an eviction would go. Spell everything out clearly. I mean, they're only there for 2 or 3 months, right? Yard maintenance is still their problem. As clearly as you can in the lease. I would, and again, since there's something special like that, have your agent or a real estate attorney look at the verbiage to make sure it's going to stand up in your court system in your local area. Something I got from my brother was, for his leases, he reached out to his attorney that he keeps on retainer in case he ever has to have an eviction. And he asked the attorney, what would you like in my lease that would make your job easier if we have to go through an eviction together? Take that verbiage, make sure it's in your lease. So I would reach out to an attorney in your area because they know what's legal and what would be the thing that would help them do their job the most if you had to go through the eviction. And congratulations. John, Texas. Dion, you used to say you thought you'd work forever even though you'd reached financial freedom. What made you change your mind? Just curious. This is a great question because I don't know. I wish I had an answer. I love the company. I love that I grew it. I mean, there were 6 staff, 1 location. I'm the company president. We've grown to 5 locations. There's 60 staff. I love what we do. I kind of want a life without an alarm clock. I think the mental shift came, and if the owners of my company are watching, this is definitely an overshare. But why did I make the shift of, I used to say, I'm not sure why people say financial independence, retire early. I'm not even sure I'm going to retire late because I love my job. I'm going to do it forever. But this rock we're spinning on has been here for billions of years. And we're going to get, if you're lucky, 70 to 90 years to be on it. I love my job, but it's a job. It has an alarm clock. It has a schedule. It has expectations. It's my job for all 60 staff to make sure that there's enough students for there to be work next month. It's my job to make sure that there's enough employers who want to hire the students who graduate the month after that. It's my job. Like, all of that responsibility is mine. Had a meeting this morning where the Department of Licensing was trying to figure out how to F over every company on the planet. And my input is needed to bridge. Employers have a driver's need. People need a job. Department of Licensing is run by moronic people with no sense of intelligence whatsoever. Yeah. I don't know if I want that stress. I think it might make me lose my hair someday. Which the lumberjack landlord's wife, Ashley, told me I have to dye my hair a color. She gets to pick it now that I hit 10,000 subs. So let me know if next week, if you noticed a different hair color. So that's why I think I changed. And it's because work is so optional that I have the opportunity to live literally any life I want. Any Airbnb, any Verbo, any country I want to go to, scuba dive anywhere I want, help as many people as I can reach financial freedom. Um, yeah, I don't know what the trigger was. I think I need to do like some meditating or something and figure out where was the mental shift where I had this ownership over, and I'm literally, here's the overshare of the day, the second one or third one or whatever this is. I'm walking away from about $2 million and don't care. With our company, I have what is called golden handcuffs. So I'm just an employee who had some ideas that grew the company, and I've been running the company now for about 8 years, 9 years. And the owners haven't been on a campus. They don't have to be involved in the day-to-day. They moved to Arizona, then they moved to Florida, and all the campuses at that point in time were in Washington. So they have financial freedom because I'm running the company, which is great. They gave me an opportunity. I'm totally happy to work there and kind of like give them back for the opportunity they gave me. But golden handcuffs come from, I own 10% of the company. Technically, there's a contract where if the company sells, I get 10% of the sale. Valuation is around 20 million. So I'd make $2 million as long as I work there. When I quit, I don't own anything because it's golden handcuffs. It's a reward for continuing to work for the company. When I walk away, they could sell the next day and I don't get a penny. The power of financial freedom is that I'm at the point I can walk away from $2 million and don't care. Because how much more than enough do we need? Yeah. So that was a great question. I am actually not sure what made me change my mind. Kelly, howdy. Update on your most recent offer from last week. I have made a couple of offers. The 1,030,000, I offered 990. They said they needed to net $1 million. I said, well, you should have sold in December then, before interest rates jumped up. They have dropped it to $1,015,000. I'm firm at 990. That's where it makes sense. That's where the number, and even there, that's like the minimum return that I would want is right there. So still holding out, still for sale. Days on market is increasing, and I have a feeling they're going to come back in a week and say, well, maybe we'll take your 990. And I will say, cool, let me see what rates are, because it might be 950 now, depending on what rates are. And hopefully people are reporting these. They're just bots, so there'll be a new 10, 20 of them next week. Oh, there's got to be some kind of cure for that. Jason C. Always stay up on your TPS reports, chat. Very important. Very important. Yes. Howdy, Jason. Howdy, Esther. Have to pay extra for Wi-Fi on the ship. Okay. And will it be good Wi-Fi? Because you could pay for Wi-Fi on an airplane, but they send in packets. So it's not like you could stream something, but you can get a bunch of texts all at once. This is my first cruise. We'll see how that goes. I will never say your name right. Timo Kruvalakaba. Do you think one day investors will buy all the homes in the market and there will be no room for first-time home buyers? What do you think? We are becoming a nation of renters. It is entirely possible, but think about this. There have been homeowner companies investing for hundreds of years in Europe, in Asia. In the United States, we only have a couple hundred years to work with. And people say, I saw this video today that I wanted to do a reaction to, but it was so bad. The person said 50% of rentals in the United States are owned by corporations, and 50% are owned, which is a load of crap. About 3% last year were purchased by hedge funds, and now it's up to like 11%. So there is a growth in how many hedge funds are buying rentals. But the quote of 50% are owned by corporations means that people don't listen to me and they purchased in an LLC. That's not a hedge fund. That's not a corporation. That's somebody that took a bunch of extra steps they probably didn't need to create a bunch of problems they didn't need to own their property. A lot of the hedge funds are using the iBuyer method where they're using AI to buy. And Zillow lost $500 million last year. It's not a model for success. So yes, some of the newer homes purchased will be in those hedge funds, but I don't think for decades to come that it's an issue that we're going to have to worry about. They're not buying the things that we're generally looking for. In my market, I'm looking for 15 to 40-year-old properties that don't need a lot of work. Yeah, so that's not a concern of mine with the hedge funds or the corporations buying them. And home buyers get this advantage of first-time home buyer programs where they offer you part of your down payment. California has that new one coming out where it's like a 10% loan that gets forgiven if you've stayed there for 5 years. Low down payments, better interest rates. The competition from an investor, let alone hedge fund, but just investor to home buyer. Home buyer is our biggest competition as an investor. So not something I'm too concerned about. Julie Anderson, congratulations. Thank you. Tammy A. Howdy. Dion, when homes are unaffordable, is it better to sell the property or keep it as a rental? The one rental at a time idea was when the affordability rate dropped so low, it made sense to sell. But that's Michael Zuber's theory, and I don't think there's something wrong with it. It's not mine. The question, anytime it comes to selling a property, doing a cash out refinance, taking out a home equity line of credit, the question always starts with, do I have a place to deploy the funds that will generate a good enough return to either justify the loss of an asset, which is appreciating and getting principal pay down and cash flowing, or adding a debt on an asset? Will the next investment be worth that work, energy, effort, and loss? Do you have that deal? And I'm not saying in my area, it seems like a 3 or 4% is the average return. So this is how it works. I mean, the actual address with an offer you think you would get accepted if you made it at that amount, that you can do a 1031 exchange into something that made sense. I'm not doing that. My goal is properties are like a marriage, till death do us part. But my goal was financial freedom. If you have the goal like Michael Zuber or the lumberjack landlord of growing a massive portfolio that grows on its own, yes, recycling capital, selling at the right time and buying at the right time. If there is a time to sell, it's when affordability is very low. Not sure if you missed your window of 2 months ago, interest rates were better for sellers. So we really had a strong seller's market. Now we're kind of in this limbo of switching to a buyer's market where you still might get a price that makes sense. But there's a whole bunch of factors there on what your portfolio is like, what your goals is like, what your market is like, what deals you're finding is like. So it'd be hard for me to answer that, except to give my actual example of I have a paid off house that's worth 4 times what I paid for it, and I'm not selling. I have had to think about it. I've had to sit back and go, well, it makes sense to sell. But if I had the like $400,000 I would walk away with from a sale, do I have a deal I could put that to work in? And those deals aren't here yet enough for me to be confident that I would find one, make the offer, deploy the funds in the timeline of a 1031 for it to make sense. Let me know what you choose. Cashflow Johnny, howdy. Went back to listen to here's my late submission. I need $6,200 a month cash flow to become financial free. Good. So you know it's a monthly amount too. Jamie, howdy. Mom was here in Florida and asked what I was doing. She says, hi. Howdy, Judy. Hope you're having a great trip. And you guys are in Naples. There has to be something more fun to do than to see me on YouTube. Nessie, hello. And Jamie, make sure to explain to your mom that all of those are porn spam that come onto my live streams. DJ Gaines, howdy. I take my chances with Section 8 not paying versus a cash buyer. I would too. I would still like to have a percentage of the portfolio each way. One of the concerns is Section 8 sometimes is below the area average, and you have to kind of fight to get them there. Whereas if you have a new unit go empty and you do a remodel, you're going to get area average or better rents. So that's a case where I just did a tenant flip where I might not want to rent a Section 8 because I can get significantly more. It's about balance. Rob, I just got the electrical panel for my duplex after 1 month passed when they said they'd have it. Now I'm told there is a 4-month wait for the same panel. Now I see why you don't buy fixer. It wasn't like that a couple years ago, but right now I think people are having trouble 90-day waits to get windows, stuff like that. Would be very challenging. David, I just had my agent text me about a condo I am interested in West Louisiana. I guess that's what LA means, unless it's Los Angeles. 8 offers already, no more showings, lots of all cash offers. Holy wow, this is all the doom and gloom, hopium crash people. 8 offers already, no more showings. Lots of all cash. So yeah, there are some markets where I think prices are still going to continue to go up for a while, and there's still going to be a lot of demand. Blake, howdy. I asked a question about your insurance on your rentals last week regarding the $2 million umbrella coverage you put over all your units. Does that happen to be with the same broker? It is, and sometimes they'll require it. Not always. And sometimes they'll require your auto and your home and your properties all be under that umbrella. Some don't. You can call different companies to get an umbrella policy. Mine currently is. It's Stillwater Insurance through Geico, and some years they don't offer an umbrella policy. Some years they do. And I'm still going to report all the spammers. Blake, and my chat moved. Sorry. You have for all of your individual 300,000 slip fall and full replacement cost coverage. I do, and the highest deductible possible. Some of my properties it's 10,000, some it's 5,000. So it depends on when you're getting the policy, how much they'll allow the deductible to be. My goal is to never make a homeowner's insurance claim unless it's a complete burn down or a serious injury, because your rates can triple, and for 5 years, no one else might insure you. Pretty big risk. So many trolls. Blake, just curious if that's been more challenging to get more limited companies than that offer that, or any info you can share on that would be helpful. Cool. Hopefully that helped. DJ Gaines Diesel here is 659. Yep. And of course, the porn spammers show up when my friend's mom is here to watch. Ultimate bargains. Do now what the other people won't do so that later you can do what the other people can't do. Exactly. Alec, howdy. And then Melinda, howdy. You took a message back to make me lose sleep tonight because I will always wonder what you were actually saying. Larry, howdy from Spokane. Nice. Jason. Howdy, Jason, Melinda. I don't want to end up like the hamster. So I assuming that was the message that was taken back. And now I'm really going to lose sleep. Rob, sell your life or wife 1 hour at a time. What are you going to do when no one's buying? Well, I've seen how many kids take care of pets. Yeah, right. I never thought of it like that. Great show. Thank you. Ultimate bargains. Okay. Tennessee Tweety. Do you ever worry about the scarcity in trade people? Do you have suggestions on how to navigate the shortage? I'm actually thought about learning a trade when I retire in 9 years. So having a CDL in my back pocket has made it to where I can have a job. I mean, sometimes it might not have been the job I wanted, but no matter what happened, I had a job somewhere. I think most people should have a trade. One of the problems we have right now is the education system. High schools get funding based on how many graduates apply to college. Not how many go to college, not how many graduate college, none of that, just how many apply. So for your educational life, the high schools, in order to get funding, have to constantly browbeat kids into applying for college. So much so that there's a 4-year association here in Washington that doesn't let trade videos play in schools. And I went to the high school one time when my daughter was there. She was a junior and she still had another year to go. And she said something that made me super proud of her, but she might have wanted to wait a year to say this. We were in the, what do they call it? The community center where they job information. And along the wall, there were 64 banners of different colleges. And I was talking to the principal, and my daughter was there, and I said, I'm curious, we're here in this career technical room. Why are there so many colleges, but there's nothing about HVAC, welding, CDL, like all of these other options that people have that are, where there's a shortage of, these are trades that can have money. And the principal looks at me and goes, well, I mean, think about it this way. Like, your daughter's right here. Don't you want her to go to college? And without missing a beat, my daughter just looks at him and goes, I'm not going to college. I'm going to get a CDL like my dad, make twice what you do. Very proud of her. Very good thing to say. But she still had a year left at that school. She ended up graduating and doing fine. Not going to college and making probably what a principal makes. Yeah, I would develop a trade. I encourage people to develop trades. I mean, I run a CDL school. Whether you want to work in anything, if you have a CDL, a welding cert, HVAC tech, so anything that you can do where that's going to be in demand. There are times where college makes sense. If you want to work in some state or government jobs and it just says you must have a degree, they don't care what it is, sure. If you want to work in accounting, medical, like there's all these fields where the degree specifically matters. But if you want an arts degree or liberal arts degree or anything that isn't tied to the way you make money, get a trade, reach financial freedom, and then go to college. Pay for it. Don't rack up debt to do it. Just my suggestion. Random guy on YouTube. Eliho, howdy. Good one. Ultimate bargains. FYI, you can make no mistake and still lose. That's called real life. You are vulnerable to damage by criminals, and injury or illness could happen anytime. Life is about managing risks, not hiding. I agree very much with that. FYI, I had golden handcuffs and walked away too. I learned far too late that my time on earth is very limited. Everyone's time on earth is limited. Exactly. What is it? Memento Mori? Google that later. Memento Mori. M-O-R-I. Burhane. Howdy. Have you ever considered adding a legal ADU to your properties to increase your cash flow? I have thought about it. I actually met with a great YouTube channel that you should check out called That ADU Guy. He's in Oregon. I was at the Northwest Action Summit, and we were both presenters there. So I actually sat and talked to them quite a bit. I currently have not built an ADU, and Michael Zuber has been trying to build an ADU for about a year. So the municipality you're in and the plans that you have to build and everything, so that kind of depends on it too. More places are ADU friendly because of the housing shortage. So they're trying to figure out ways to shorten the process, remove barriers, those kind of things. I have considered it. I have a triplex on a property zoned 4. And the city said they encouraged me when I closed on it to add a 4th because right now it's on septic. And if I add a 4th, they require that I tie into city sewer, which they want. And I don't because I prefer septic over sewer. But if the septic starts to fail and I have to tie into sewer, I will probably put a 4th unit or an ADU there and tie into city sewer. So yes, I've considered it. If I was going to do it, I would binge watch every single video from That ADU Guy. In his videos, he puts out his phone number and will answer text message questions. So he is just now starting to grow his channel. You get that information now. In a year, maybe 2, I think that information is going to cost or it'll be harder to get to. Oliver, howdy. Per your earlier discussion, you mentioned when calculating numbers on a deal, you always enter 25% down. On your first deal, you did 5% down or 25% down. Please clarify. On my first duplex, I did a 5% down loan, but I ran the numbers as though it was a year later when I had moved out and all the units were rented. And I ran the numbers as if I did a 25% down payment, even though I only did a 5% down payment. And I'm saying that now with the clarity of somebody who has learned how to run the numbers, calculate cash flow, and has several investment properties. When I did it at the time, I was like, holy crap, I can afford this one. I'm buying it. Like that was the mental process that went into it. I didn't understand cash flow, didn't understand yield, just knew I was going to be paying about $300 a month to live in a duplex, and the apartment was costing me $1,500 a month. So there was a lot less thought into it in that first duplex. I wasn't YouTube educated. I wasn't landlord educated. I hadn't listened to Rich Dad Poor Dad. I hadn't read any books. I didn't even know BiggerPockets really, other than I had read some blogs, not even vlogs, like with a V. It was blogs. Literally go to the internet and read an article. Some of them were written by Michael Zuber back then. A lot less thought went into it. When I say it now, I have the clarity of I understand the business now. When I was looking at that duplex to calculate what my yield is, here's how I would do it. Since then, I've done 20% down on the fourplex. All the rest were 25% down. After the income snowball, it just gets easier and easier to save the down payments. The struggle becomes finding the deal because the cash it builds so fast. I start thinking, I'm losing. If inflation is, I'm going to use a round number, 10% this year, I'm losing $40,000 in buying power because I have so much money in a savings account looking for the next deal, right? That's not a good feeling. Imagine that. I've saved so much money, it's giving me a bad feeling. Like that's the position I'm trying to get all of you into, or as many of you that aren't there now into it. And my chat moved again. Zillow. Right. Larry Chong. Howdy. Thanks for making it. On your cruise, maybe schedule the IT person at a half hour before live stream. Maybe. That's a good idea. Yeah. Alec. Howdy. How do you protect yourself from a lawsuit? First, you can't protect yourself from a lawsuit. You can be sued for anything. Don't even have to own properties. Don't even have to have a job. You can just be sued for anything. So you can't protect yourself from being sued, but you can protect yourself from the lawsuits. So I have a video on my channel called LLC Rant, which lets you know that there is no asset protection from having an LLC unless you have partners. There are no tax benefits at all with an LLC. It has no impact on your taxes whatsoever, and it doesn't give you asset protection unless you have partners. And it's not because they can pierce the veil. Some people will say, well, you really have to make a financial mistake for them to pierce the veil. No, they can just pierce the veil if you're the sole proprietor. In the counties that I invest in, they are blanket disregarded. They use the IRS decision that happened in 1996 where they disregard all single member LLCs. It's called a disregarded entity. So in these counties, they're not considered. You get sued, whether it's in an LLC or in your name, you are being sued. So there's three ways I protect myself from the lawsuit that is probably eventually going to happen. How many times have I been sued? I haven't been sued for real estate, but I've been sued for a lot of other things. Oh, there's some stories. No. So the first thing is insurance. Okay. I have what is called homeowners insurance on each property. Up to $300,000 injury. So if somebody falls or gets injured, up to $300,000 will cover that case. And then I have full replacement value of the property. So not just the lender will require that they're made whole. So however much the mortgage is, they require that much insurance. As the owner, I do full coverage because I want to be made whole, not just the insurance, if there's a problem. If the place burns down, my mortgage company is not going to make a penny. I'm going to get a brand new building built from insurance and continue to make my mortgage. Instead of, okay, it's burned down, I now have nothing, and the insurance pays off the mortgage, and at least I don't owe a bunch of debt on the nothing. That wouldn't be good either because then you don't have a cash flowing asset. So full replacement value and $300 slip fall injury coverage on each property. Then I have an umbrella policy on me where I'm named for up to $2 million, which originally was $550 a year. Now I think it's like $640. So if I'm sued on a property, somebody gets injured, and the lawsuit goes above the $300,000 in coverage, it then triggers the umbrella policy up to $2 million, which protects the assets. So that's the first thing is insurance. The second thing is leverage. I have 7 properties with 16 rental units on them. Most of my properties, if you're new to my channel, are small multifamily. So what's it? 4 duplexes, 4 duplexes, a single family house, a triplex, and a fourplex. 16 rental units, 7 properties. 6 of my properties have mortgages. which means the bank is in first position. If I'm ever sued, they're not going to get the property because I owe the bank more money than, I owe the bank money first. So insurance, leverage, and then the third thing, which is the most important, be proactive. Take action. Do walkthroughs. Have your handyman fix things. Listen to tenants if they complain about a loose banister. That is a fire, flood, or blood thing that you're going to fix tonight. A loose banister doesn't stay loose from one day to the next. If it's something simple like a cabinet door is loose or something on a lower shelf, you're not going to worry about it. But something that needs attention now gets fixed now. And do walkthroughs. Sometimes you can say, you just tell your tenant, say, I'm doing an annual walkthrough. I'll be there, however much time. I give us plenty of notice so that they can hide pets they don't think I know about. I don't care how many pets they have. And I'll do a walkthrough. I'll have handyman do walkthroughs. It can be, I need to inspect the water heater to find out how old it is, like I'm going to be doing in all my properties next month. It can be, I need to replace your HVAC filter, which gives me an excuse to walk through the property. So to look for safety issues or anything concerned. So those are the three things. Starts with insurance, then goes to leverage, then be proactive and actually fix things. That's how I protect myself from a lawsuit. Okay. Ultimate bargains. Alec, I learned that your attorney's number one job is to keep you out of the defendant's chair. Nice. Joshua, howdy. Love your content. Thank you. Thanks for inspiring us towards financial independence. I have simple questions. Can I walk away from accepted offer after inspection for any reason? Can you explain earnest money, please? Absolutely happy to. You can walk away during your inspection before you have the inspection done and not lose your earnest money. One of the reasons why I've suggested, where people talked about it in the last 2 years, we've had the seller's market where you have to be fast, over asking price offers, waive contingencies, name your firstborn after the seller, like all these things you had to do to get their attention, high earnest money. I would never waive an inspection contingency. And it's not because I want an inspection done. I've had an inspection done on every property I've bought now and one I didn't buy. In the future, there might come a time where I just buy it without an inspection, but I'll still have the inspection clause because I need time to go to the property, to see the streets next door, to see if it's on a noisy street, a dangerous street, a bad neighborhood that I wasn't aware of, and make up my mind whether I want the property or not. An inspection clause has two parts. Most people think about inspection clause as I'm going to get an inspection done by a professional. So that's the main thing people think about. The real benefit to the inspection clause is a period of days. I like 10 in the seller's market where speed mattered. I dropped that to 5. So 5 days to make up my mind. Usually I'll make a 10-day inspection offer to give time to get the inspection scheduled. During that inspection, you do not even need to give the reason why you're dropping out. You could say anything you want. You get your earnest money back. That is why I have an inspection clause for the period of time to make up my mind. You don't lose your earnest money. After that, you have the appraisal clause, which if it's too big of a gap that you can't cover or don't want to cover and the seller doesn't want to come down, you can walk away and keep your earnest money. So that's why I suggest having an appraisal clause. If you do an all cash offer, that usually takes the appraisal clause off the table because it's your money going there and you have a lender that you need to satisfy. An appraisal protects the lender and inspection protects you. So to me, that inspection period, it's not about the inspection. You can have no inspection clause and have an inspection done. Like that, there's nothing saying you can't do that. But to walk out and back out of a deal without losing your earnest money, you need that period of time to make up your mind. That's, to me, the power of making an offer when I haven't even been to the property yet, is because I still have the ability to back out and not lose any money. That's what earnest money is. You're saying, I'm putting up this money that will belong to you if I back out after my inspection period, and even if the appraisal comes in high enough. If I back out then, you get your money. And I've had a friend do that. They'd lost $10,000 in earnest money because they looked at a property. They took longer than the inspection period. It appraised right. And then they didn't like where the fence line was or something. So they just backed out and lost 10 grand. Not something I would want to do. Karen, howdy. Glad you made it to a live too. Thank you. Laura, Dion, please add the light motion detector link again. So let me take a picture of that. I will make a comment after this, not in the live chat. but I will do that afterwards. That's one of the upgrades I do to the properties when I purchase them. The first things that I do is I replace the locks with coated locks, and I have a link that I'll put there too. And then I replace the exterior porch lights and garage lights. So I'm not adding lights. I'm replacing the existing lights with motion sensor LED lights. Uses less power, still gives the tenant control with the switch if they want the light to be on or not, or they can have it motion sensor. They're brighter, they look better, they're more modern. Something that I do to help the binder conversation go better 2 months later. Lumberjack landlord. Howdy, Matt. Give this man some likes. He's crushing it for you. If I've earned a like, I would appreciate it. It lets YouTube know that you guys like content. If you don't like it and you think I just have an ugly face, you should hit the dislike button twice, so I know you didn't like it. David Yang. I always do that, Matt. Thank you. Awesome. And then a whole bunch of porn. Tiffany. I think that's where I was at, right? Yep. Howdy, Tiffany. I think you need a moderator to knock out this trolls. Yes. How do we? And it really was just one this time. So somehow, are they still posting even after they've been reported? Hide user from channel. That seemed to help. Okay. But it's different. So, yeah. There's also this. Let me see. Lumberjack. Add moderator. Lumberjack landlord is now a moderator on your channel. There we go. I don't know what that means. Maybe you get all the money now, Matt. Enjoy. Buy pizza. Laura, my umbrella policy is not under the same broker. Cool. So it's possible to get it in 2 different places. Ultimate bargains. Remembering that you are going to die is the best way I know to avoid the trap of thinking you have something to lose. You are already naked. There is no reason just to follow your heart. Steve Jobs. Nice. Memento Mori. CJ Underwood. Why do you prefer septic over sewer? I figure one less thing to worry about. No. You worry about sewer just as much as you worry about septic, and you pay for sewer every month. I have a septic tank that was put in 1991. I had it pumped once in 2012 because of feminine hygiene products with my second tenant there after the first nightmare. And that's it. Pumped once since 1991. I've never spent a penny on that septic system ever. I have duplexes where I'm paying $100 a month per side to have it connected to septic. I've basically bought 20 septic systems with all of my other rental units. And the time that I've had plumbing issues, it was with sewer on my lines. So it was my problem. Did not like that. That was stupid. Septic to me is better. Both are going to have their issues. Both have pros and cons. And yes, when the septic has an issue, the pump was $300. So a month and a half of expense for a duplex. Or I might have to replace the whole system at some point, right? So that might be 20 grand. But it was put in 91. How many $20,000 hasn't happened since I haven't paid $200 a month to have a septic system or a sewer connected on that system? That's why I prefer septic over sewer. As far as water and well, it's about the same. I only have one that's on well. I've never had an issue with it. I actually have more problems with it because you have to recert it every 5 years, and me remembering to do something like that is not happening. Whereas water you pay for every month, but the tenants pay that amount. Tenants pay for sewer. Tenants pay for water. Tenants pay for septic. So that when I do have that problem, they've actually been paying. I charge at this one place $30 for septic, $30 for water, both sides. So that when I have that expense in the future, it's covered by that. That's why I prefer septic over sewer. Alec, thank you. Blake, I'm with CJ on the septic tank. Why I prefer septic over city? Larry, you've said you found your 2 handyman on Thumbtack. I will clarify that. How did you actually choose them? What did you look for with them, and how do you use them? How often? I use Thumbtack to find contractors. A great place to find contractors, get quotes, read reviews. That's my use for Thumbtack. So roofer, plumber, tree surgeon, arborist, whatever, all of those came from Thumbtack. For my handyman, networking, word of mouth, local REI meetups, and Facebook groups for your area. So I have 3 right now that I'm working. One's going to work and then it's not really available anymore. So I have my original handyman and a new handyman, both who do great work in my area that I met through my network. Neither one of them I think is on Thumbtack. So local REI meetups, Facebook groups in your area, maybe BiggerPockets. I haven't tried the forums for that, but that might be another one too if you're not finding the local groups in your area. But I like local REI meetups because you get a face-to-face conversation with people who've used the handyman before. And sometimes the handyman are there looking for business, or the people that are there know of a handyman who's too busy to be there, but they can give you their contact info. That's how I find my handyman. Ultimate bargains. FYI, earnest money deposit is not required for a legally binding contract unless the parties specifically agree in the contract that emergency money is required. It is not required. Some people do an earnest money of $1. I had a friend reach out to me the other day and say, "How much is normal?" And some people do 5% or 1% or 2%. Usually 1% is plenty. I've done bigger earnest money during a strong seller's market to get the seller's attention, even though it really wasn't at risk because they had an inspection clause period and an appraisal clause. So there's no real rhyme or reason to it. It's what you can get the seller to agree to is how much your earnest money should be. And then Matt took a message back to make me lose money. Sleep tonight, Lou. It's great. Doug, howdy. I'm still driving this old Peterbilt for now, because you inspired me to be a better truck and increase my dry powder. Awesome. Nice. It is for now, not forever, just for now. We house hack for now. We save and live frugally for now. We're not frugal later. And I say I was frugal in those first 5 years, but I still did a lot of stuff because house hacking was a bigger impact than eliminating small things would have been. Million. Is there anyone in this live chat from Columbus, Ohio? If so, if you're interested in sharpening each other, try local Facebook groups and try BiggerPockets for meetups in the area. And local Facebook groups might also talk about people that are getting together. I know I have a friend who invests in Columbus, but she lives here in Washington. Abby, howdy. Thank you for great content. Can you explain your offer process? Will you just give the lower price that makes sense to your yield calculations, or will you give an explanation? Some places will not let you send what's called a love letter. So depending on your agent's response, they might say, well, you can't send this because it says you live in the area, you're trying to raise a family, you want to invest for blah, blah, blah. That's a love letter saying, here's why you should sell to me. So some areas have restrictions on that. Listen to what your agent says. I tend to make 2 offers, and I might start making 3 depending on how long things sit on the market. The first in the last 2 years, I was quick. Here's my traditional lending. If I'm going to have a loan, this is my down payment. This is the amount that I'll pay. I pitch seller financing based on if they've owned the property more than like 10 years, so they have a good enough equity position to do that. So I submit my seller financing email with my offer. Sometimes seller financing can be more than my loan offer because I might get a better interest rate. I might say I'd rather pay interest to you, and right now banks are charging 5.5% interest. A seller can do it for 0 interest, but get a better price, or 1 or 2% interest. There's no set amount of percentage for interest that the seller has to take. It's not. You're usually educating the seller how this even works. So why would you speak into existence that you might pay the same interest to them that you would pay to a bank? If they want to get more money for your house, let's do it at 2% interest, and then I can offer you $50,000 more or $100,000 more. Cost to you might even be less. So multiple offers at the same time. What I've been doing is here's my actual offer with the DocuSign through the agent, and then here's my seller financing email, which doesn't have a lot of detail about me. It has the benefits for seller financing to the seller, and now going forward, it might be a higher price. And then my last couple of offers, I've also offered I wait for 2 days. If they don't accept it, then I'm offering the 50-40-10, where it's 50% LTV through a lender, 40% seller finance carried, the seller carries a note, and then 10% is me, so that the seller gets 60% at closing, and then 40% is carried on payments. Doing that going forward. There we go. Kris, sometimes life is going to hit you in the head with a brick. Don't lose faith. Steve Jobs. They're going to Steve Jobs quote. I think Steve Jobs is the one who I quote. No, there was a quote from him that I was using for a while. No idea on moderating. I think it lets you ban somebody from the thing or remove a comment, but good luck. We'll figure it out together. I have no idea how to do moderating either. Except you got a little monkey wrench by your name now. Abby, also, will you give your owner financing offer at the same time I do it at the same time? The 50-40-10 is coming later right now. Jason C, lumberjack learner, use the wrench to smack people over the head. Works for me. It's not working. Beth, howdy Beth, glad to see you made it to alive. Thanks for showing up. When you find great providers, handymen, etc., treat them like royalty, and find out what matters to them. I do this with my agents, my lenders. I try to give them referrals. Sometimes I just went into a lender I've never used, but I like their product, so I'll refer a ton of people to them. Like Alex Chin from Certain Lending here in Seattle, I've referred a ton of people, but I've never actually used him. I just know that the people I've sent have had a good experience. Same thing with handyman. I ask them, is this your side hustle? Do you have enough work? Are you looking for more clients? I have one that's trying to grow a business. So I'm like, hey, I have a YouTube channel. You live in my area. Let me funnel as much work to you as I can, as long as you still do my jobs. Treat them like royalty, because I have such a good relationship with my handyman that my tenants contact the handyman for issues. Handyman has up to a $500 threshold where they can do the repair, or say, I will do that repair the next time I'm out to do something bigger, because that's not an emergency. Anything over 500, they just reach out to me to verify that it's okay to do. So I have sometimes tenant issues where I'm not involved at all, and I self-manage my rentals. Makes it a lot easier to keep that self-managing 16 rental units under 2 hours a month. Cheers. And again, I would like to thank our sponsor for this week, Alien Vodka, who doesn't sponsor my videos, but is probably going to sue me someday. And then my chat moved. Ultimate bargains, FYI. Sometimes the seller will pay earnest money to compensate buyer for the risk-specific performance of the contract. The seller has a put option to choose when compel the buyer to close the deal. Above my head, the more of a seller's market we're in, the less concessions or agreements you'll get from the seller, the more of a buyer's market you're in. In 2018, when I was buying properties, sellers just paid closing costs. It was assumed. Like, it wasn't never a discussion. You would just make your offer and they're going to pay closing costs. The last 2 years, not so much. We might be seeing the pendulum shift back to that as we go forward. That's why it pays to know what's going on in the market today. Daniel, howdy. I'm starting a scuba course this month. I've wanted to for years, and your trip to Florida inspired me to get on any advice for a scuba newbie. A Scooby, if you will. We'll keep the sense of humor. You're going to need it. The dive instructors tend to be very charismatic, so it's going to be fun. I don't think I've ever met somebody who wasn't very personable who wanted to be a dive instructor. You're going to learn in a pool first. If you don't learn how to take your mask off underwater unexpectedly, so if your instructor does that, he's not being a jerk. They're not being a jerk. She's not being a jerk. It almost always happens the first time you're diving with somebody. You're both sitting like this, and then you guys want to go that way. So you're going to tilt and go that way, which means their fins are going to go right in your face. So your mask, the first 5 or 6 dives you go on, because you don't realize I need this much space between me and everybody around me, you're going to get your mask knocked off a couple of times, which means water in your nose while you're trying to breathe in your mouth. That would be my advice, is when you're in the pool and they say, okay, we're going to take our mask off and learn how to breathe through our mouth. It's like the military. The more you sweat in practice, the less you bleed in combat, right? So when scuba, the more you practice in the pool, where you can just stand up if you need to, the better your experience is going to be in the water, because you are going to lose your mask. It is going to happen. And if you've practiced enough in the pool, you're like, I am slowly breathing out of my nose. I will put my mask back on. I will then open my eyes. I will hold the mask in. I will tilt it toward the water, and I will let air out of my nose, and everything's fine. In about 10 seconds, you're completely going like nothing ever happened. But it freaks everybody out in the beginning. Good luck. Enjoy. And believe me, I've got some awesome pictures. There's usually a camera guy, girl, whatever, that goes with you scuba. It's worth the 10 or 15 bucks for the time for them to buy the camera and take pictures of you scubaing. So buy the pictures. Galen, Dion, you have mentioned that you are doing a seller financing offer if the owner has been owning the property for more than 10 years because it would have more equity. Correct. Seller financing works only if the property is completely paid off. Not really. If the seller has a mortgage, your down payment or your loan plus your down payment needs to be enough to cover taking care of the mortgage so they can seller finance, and the agent fees. So if you have agents or attorney fees that are going to happen, basically most sellers don't want to write a check to give you an asset. So your down payment needs to be enough to get the seller what they want to walk away with. And it might be $10,000 or $20,000 to do something, but they're trying to avoid a large capital gains hit. So they're not usually going to want a lot of money. But if they owe $300,000 and it's $1 million property and you offered $350,000, then your 300 covers their mortgage, the 50 covers the agent fees and the money that the seller might want to walk away with. And you can do the math, that might adjust up or down. But I steal this from the lumberjack landlord. The most important thing to do is to find out what the seller wants. What are their needs? What are they trying to do? Do they want $100,000 but don't want $5,000? So whatever that's going to be, you might get a mortgage for a portion of it to cover their mortgage. You might, I've never heard of this, but you take over their mortgage like a sub 2, and then you give them their down payment and they carry the loan the rest of the way. So there's a ton of options, but you don't know what the options are until you find out what the seller wants to do. My Serenity. Howdy. How long is the term for seller finance? Anywhere from 1 day to 100 years. You literally get to speak the terms into existence. What you suggest to the seller is going to be what they know. I've heard a lot of people say, you have to pay more interest rate, you have to do a bigger down payment, you have to have a balloon payment, and none of that's real. You and the seller are agreeing to you buying the property for a price, and then sometimes price isn't as important as terms. I offer 30-year fixed rate debt at this percentage. That's what my seller financing offers are. You can do balloon payments. I wouldn't want to. It's one of the main reasons I don't buy commercial properties, is because none of us know where our portfolio, cash flow, and the market is going to be in 7 or 10 years. So why gamble on that? That's why 30-year fixed rate debt is attractive to be a residential investor. Same thing with seller financing. What you say and how you educate the seller and what the seller wants is going to be what sets your terms. More often than not, the seller doesn't want you to just pay them off sooner, because their goal is to avoid that large capital gains hit. So if you do seller financing, get the contract locked down, and then finance it with the bank and pay them off the next month, you just gave them what they didn't want. So sometimes in my seller financing, I will offer a $20,000 penalty if I pay you off early in 5 years. So for those 5 years, if you decide to pay them off, they're going to get another extra 20 grand. And there are options like Convoy Home Mortgage has a prepayment penalty on their 30 or 40-year fixed rate, where in the first 5 years, it's 20%. So you can pay off 20% every year, or what's left has to be penalized. And they have a better way of explaining it. I think I have a video on here with their image on there called the 40-year fixed rate, or what is a DSCR loan. They were on twice. Contacting Convoy Home Mortgage might be the way to find out how their prepayment penalty works. But when it comes to seller financing, what you say, how you educate the seller, is going to be what your options are. So be careful what you say. And then my chat moved, which is good. Jason. I think I've heard 40% equity before, if not mistaken. So it depends on how much of their mortgage you can cover. Tiffany. Moderators can ban people, time out people, and post links. Oh, good. So Matt, you can post links. That'd be great. Ultimate bargains. My serenity. Seller financing is for as long as you can negotiate. So how you negotiate? Absolutely. Gee, howdy. I wish I can say that. I can retire in 3 years starting any day from tomorrow, but I guess not today. It depends on your starting position. I think some people could do it. For me, I think the average person can do it in 10 years. So if you're educated, you're above average. And I don't mean educated with a degree. I mean educated on YouTube University on how all of this works and picking the strategy. So it can be done a lot less. I say 10 years so that we know that there's a time element to it, because rents go up, mortgages stay the same or get paid off, rates might drop for refinance. It's all kinds of reasons why within 10 years it's very, and I hate to say this, but it's easy. It's so much easier to reach financial freedom in 10 years or less than it is to work more than 40 hours a week for more than 40 years to retire on less than 40% of what you made. That doesn't sound easy at all. Lumberjack. Got it. Lumberjack is now moderating. Thank you. Appreciate it, Matt. Ultimate bargains. I know that depends, Galen. It depends on your definition of seller financing. A wraparound note or contract or deed are also seller financing, in your humble opinion. Mine too. That's where you take over their mortgage and they carry a note. My serenity. What is a usual term for seller's financing? 30 years, 25 years? I hear the most people talk about 10 years with a balloon payment, but I don't want that. I would do 30-year fixed rate. Part of my seller's financing pitch is you would like to continue to get payments, but not have to deal with tenant termites and toilets. And I would rather pay you interest than the lender. What about not having 30 years of that doesn't sound good? So I would do, in my case, I offer 30. Jack. I remember in one of your videos, you talked about being a police officer and you mentioned that a certain percentage of society are sociopaths. What were those numbers again? I couldn't find again. Well, I think if you live in Washington State, it's about 105% are sociopaths. It's around 3%. So out of every 100 people, there are 3 sociopaths. They generally work as the company president or CEO because it takes sociopathic tendencies to make the decisions to get into that type of leadership position. So this is just data that you get in your police officer training. That comes with a lot of other stuff, and like all other data, 87% of all statistics are made up on the spot, including that one. And it's 1% are not sociopaths; they're psychopaths, and there's a big difference between the two. Ultimate bargains. Scuba freaks you out. Too many sea monsters with big pointy teeth lurking underwater. Of course, I've never been scuba diving in the ocean, so what do I know? Cities freak me out. 3% of 100 people. So out of every 100 people, there's 3 sociopaths. You get into a city, that's a lot of 100 peoples. I'd rather be in the water. Galen. So Dion, let's say the property is worth 200,000 and their mortgage is 100,000. I offer them 150, so I have to come up with 50 down payment. Please elaborate on that by giving an example. So they owe 100,000. So your down payment would have to be either you take over their mortgage or you got a mortgage for the 100,000 and then had a down payment, because the seller is getting rid of the mortgage, whether you take it over or pay it off. Then you need to have enough of a down payment to cover agent fees too. So your 50 down payment wouldn't cover it. If you're offering them 150 and it's worth 200, why would they sell it to you? So I mean, the goal is to always buy properties for less than they're worth, but if they know what it's worth, it's not going to happen. If it's worth 200, people are going to offer 200. If they owe 100, you're going to either need to assume their mortgage of 100,000 or pay off their mortgage and a down payment enough to include in agent fees and probably closing costs in the current market. In 2018, when we were more in a buyer's market or more of a balanced market, it might not have needed to cover closing costs. But generally, the seller is not going to write a check to lose a property. And if you do find a motivated seller that will take 150 instead of 200, you might just do a mortgage and go that way. Seller financing isn't always the only option. It's just a really good option. Springer already? Howdy. Just hopped in. If I apologize if I've covered it. If I watch from the start tomorrow. But what about subject to combined with seller financing? That is exactly, I think if you just popped in, that's what we've been talking about. You can take over their mortgage, or you can get a mortgage to cover it, and then they carry the rest. Subject to also involves the lender, so you have to make sure that they're okay with that too, which is an entirely another video on how subject to works. Mackenzie, howdy. Hey, Dion, just now started listening, but we'll start from the beginning. Good to Dion Talk. Appreciate it. I appreciate you being so candid and open with your details. I'm hoping that they help somebody, maybe two somebody's. Beth, the beauty of seller financing is it can be whatever is agreed upon. Absolutely. I did one this year at 0 interest. Another one I let the seller to live. I let the seller to live there for free for 6 months. It can be anything, win-win. Absolutely. That's the beauty of it, is a lot of the problems with real estate, needing an appraisal, having to cover FHA ability requirements, come from the lender. Like the fact that the lender exists, this is why real estate is hard. Take the lender out of the equation. Now it's just two people agreeing on what makes sense to both of them. Know your local laws, and that's why you involve a real estate agent or an attorney, a professional who works in the industry. Spring already took a message back to make me wonder forever. Andres, I helped my brother lock in a seller finance deal from the MLS, paid retail with 30-year mortgage, 30-year amortized, no balloon, 9% interest and 7% down. Plans to refinance in the next 6 months. Cool. Hopefully that the seller was okay with that. Sometimes the seller is, and we'll see where the rates are in 6 months and see if that's the best call. I have a friend who bought a condo and has it financed through a family member, and part of the agreement was to refinance in a year. Sometimes refinancing with the family member at a rate that makes more sense to both parties is the option to go with, instead of refinancing with someone new. So maybe in 6 months, you refinance with the seller at a better interest rate based on what's going on with, because maybe they want to keep making payments and maybe you can get the interest rate lowered. So a couple of good different options there. He is self-employed for 1 year, so could not get traditional financing. Makes sense. Julie, there you are again. My seller financing was 5 years, amortized 30. I'm paying off after 3.5. So literally the options you both agree to and what makes sense for both of your situations. Mackenzie, my wife and I just house hacked our second duplex. Congratulations. We're now at 4 units. I'm thinking of using equity from our first property as a down payment for the next. What would you do? We are wanting to house hack a 4-plex next. What is your ability to save in your income? You don't have to answer these. So this is what I would look at. I would look at how much can you save? How fast will it take you to save? Because you have a year if you're starting this new house hack to save. If you're going to do another house hack, what percent down are you looking at doing on the 4-plex? And do you have confidence that that 4-plex exists and that your offer is going to be accepted? Because like I've talked about this earlier, and I'll say this in a lot of videos, the first question to answer anytime you talk about a sale, a cash out refinance, or taking out a home equity line of credit always goes back to the same question. Do I have a place to deploy these funds that justifies the sale of the asset, which is the loss of the asset, or the increased debt on the asset because you're going to reduce or eliminate the cash flow on that first asset to add the new asset? Michael Zuber has done this. Matt the Lumberjack Landlord has done this. Both of them are much more successful than I am. They had the goals of growing big portfolios. My goal was reaching financial freedom. So I've not done any of that. It takes me this long to save a down payment. So that's how long it takes me to find the next property. And then it took me this long to save. And as the cash flow increases, as you continue to house hack, as more cash flowing units exist, that time frame goes from 2 years, year and a half. Now it's every 6 months, couple $100,000. I've got to find a place to put. And so it gets harder to do, faster and more fun to do, because these are problems that we want to have in the beginning. So you asked what I would do. Here's my answer with equity. Ready? It's from the Emperor's New Groove. No touchy. Don't touch it. That equity is giving you cash flow that's protecting your asset in case there is a downturn in the market. You are house hacking, so you can't do another house hack for a year because you are owner occupying. You intend to occupy the property for at least a year. Continue to save, Get the 3.5% down for an FHA on the fourplex. Have a reason. It's in a better school district. It's closer to work. There's more bedrooms in the unit than the one that you're in now. Something that can justify going FHA to a bigger. If you have to do conventional because you can't qualify for FHA for however many lenders you shop and you just can't do it, and your equity from your previous deal is the only option you have, and you're going to continue to house hack, and it's overall going to increase your cash flow, maybe. I just haven't done that. Patience, 5 to 10 years. It just takes a while for that income snowball to kick in. It's something I say often, that one of my daughters told me. It was really super cute and way more intelligent than I thought would come from something I created. But my daughter was talking about my house, and we were talking. It's paid off. I can cash out. I can refi. I can HELOC. I can sell. I can do all this. I can deploy the funds. I just didn't know what to do. So I was doing research, and of course, Michael Zuber and the lumberjack landlord said, refi, take the money, and be ready to buy the deal that's going to come up. I didn't. But my daughter said, and after I quote her, I'm going to do a shot in her honor. She's still alive. She's done good. I'm just doing a shot because it was a really cool quote. It's hard to make a decision when both outcomes are positive. So you have some fun and maybe hard decisions to make. David, I know when I rent to high-level sociopath tendencies, they are narcissistic, lie, lazy, no empathy, think they always right, and not going about paying rent or rent at all. I try to avoid sociopaths and narcissistic qualities in people. I try to figure out who is to put them in a leadership or management role because they tend to do the best because they can make non-emotional based decisions. I like to be aware because you're right. They will say in the moment what will get them what they want. And if you're aware of that, it makes it a lot easier to deal with them. It's why I avoid cities, though, too. It's a percentage thing. The more 100 peoples that you have, the more 3% you have. CJ Underwood. If you guys love this subject to stuff, then go watch some Pace Morby to get some in-depth knowledge in that space. Watch him, watch his show, like absorb his content, maybe reach out. I mean, Pace is really good about sharing his information. And so this is something I like to do, kind of like Michael Zuber does. Michael Zuber hasn't house hacked. So Matt, the lumberjack landlord, goes in and makes house hacking section for his course. He hasn't self-managed. So me and Matt go in and make self-managing portions for his course. He didn't invest at a distance. So he has a millennial mind go in and make content for his course. I haven't done subject to. I've tried to give away one with a subject to once. Seller financing is, I think, something all content creators all investors should be pursuing, but definitely Pace Morby when it comes to that. I think that is a great source to go to for that. Ultimate bargains. Psychopaths are invisible until it is too late. They are good books about identifying psychopaths before they put in their crosshairs. We have a question that we ask during interviews, and it tells us if somebody is a sociopath or not. And it doesn't mean it's a disqualifier because, like I said, people with sociopathic tendencies do better in leadership positions. So it just tells us how to direct that person during their training. So don't type the answer, but think about this. This is the question during an interview. And you're in an interview for a position you're trying to get. So this is a weird question. First, we've already asked you a few things like, do you smoke? Do you have a concealed weapons permit? Like some non-traditional questions. Do you drink? Here's the sociopath question. And we even tell them, this is a sociopath question because this tells us if you're one or not. During an interview, we say, you went to a funeral. You're single. And while you were at the funeral for your mother, your mom passed away, so you're at her funeral, you meet the man or woman of your dreams, the absolute perfect partner, the person you would spend the rest of your life with. Like this, you guys just click. The two of you just click. It's perfect. You spend the day together at the funeral and at the wake. It's like kismet, fate, whatever you want to call it. When the person leaves, you realize you didn't get their contact info. How would you find them? And then the way the person answers you tells you if they are a sociopath or normal, or not a sociopath. I don't know which one's normal nowadays. So don't answer that in the chat. Just think. That's the question that comes up during the interview. Michelle, howdy. What do you think about a property with 7 by 1 units? ROI net is around, so 711 units. ROI is around 22%. So looking at around 7% cash flow, investing cash. ROI net is around 22%. So looking at around 7% cash flow, investing cash. Okay. I'm not the brightest cookie in the shed. So return on investment and cash flow in a percentage form to me would be the same thing, but you have two different numbers. And it's almost pi. It's like 22 divided by 7. But so 1 units in some areas have lower turnover, but if it's 7 and 1, which means you're going to have to go non-residential loan. So for that, I would contact Convoy Home Mortgage because they have 30 and 40-year fixed rate debt on up to 8 units. So I would get the fixed rate debt. If your net ROI is 22%, I'm not sure that I don't get the difference between 22% and 7%. This is where the lumberjack landlord would give you some quantum physics answer and actually know what you meant. So the ROI, if your cash on cash ROI is 22%, and you're investing, so it's investing cash, because to me it's the same. It's just how much you put in. Cost to acquire is either your down payment or the full amount. 7 units that are 1-1, I think, might have a slightly higher turnover rate than a 4-unit or less small multifamily, where it's more like a home than a unit. So factor in a little bit higher vacancy rate than in other places. If it's near a college, or you're doing traveling nurses, or if you're doing something where 1-1s have very low turnover rates, it's one of Michael Zuber's favorite. That's why he's building a smaller ADU. The lowest turnover rate is with his 1-1s. Because you generally don't have kids that are outgrowing a house. You don't have kids that are changing school districts. You don't have all these things that can make somebody move. If the ROI is good, single family, small multifamily, and now up to 8 units because I can get 30-year fixed rate or 40-year fixed rate debt, I will look at them all the same. Is that ROI better than average in your area? Then yes. If it's not, and I would also look at some other things. What is the build? Are these units that are conducive to low turnover rate? Are they all weird angles with no parking, with things that are there washer dryer hookups in the units? Things that you need to consider that might help limit tenant turnover. I would be looking at those as factors too. Yeah, so Lumberjack says share more data and it'll make sense. Michelle, trying to think of things that I should be worried about. It is in town. Good. Okay, so walking distance. Parking is a big concern, especially in town. Beto, howdy. Where do you look up your interest rates? Thanks. They change often and they change per lender. So I usually contact a couple of lenders. I've got one that works for Fargo, so a larger bank, so Wells Fargo, Bank of America, Chase, one of the larger institutions. I check with Guild Mortgage, Fairway Mortgage. I have recently checked just to see what rates would be. And so there's a lot of factors when it comes to rates. Are you buying down the rate? Is it owner occupied? How many units? Is it single family, small multifamily? Because there's a different rate adjustment for that. There's a bunch of factors. So you have to check with your lenders in your area, and they're mildly schizophrenic. What your lender tells you today, not only about the rate that they're going to have, but the loan products that they offer in 2 weeks might be totally different. So kind of stay on top of that. I don't bug them too much, usually less than once a week. So not quite every week I'll be checking in with a lender to see what's going on with current rates. But I do check with them consistently within 6 months to see if there's any information they would need to continue to be able to generate a letter of pre-approval quickly when I need one, so that when I get a deal, and right now I'm not so much in a hurry. for the last 2 years, speed was our best friend. Now, one of the things that's most in our favor is patience. So I'm not in such a rush anymore, but I used to want my letter back within 10, maybe 15 minutes. So I had to make sure I was on top of anything that they might need. Not so much of a concern now as we're shifting away from such a strong seller's market. Beth, I come up in the tax records. Does that mean I'm a psycho? Come up in the tax records. But there might be a lot of people with that name in the tax records. I'm a real estate agent. That's just what we do. You go to the taxes. And Galen, 7% of what is your cash flow? 22% ROI is an amazing number. So it depends on your area. For the last 2 years or more, the lumberjack landlord has been 20+%, or it wasn't a good deal. My area, if I can get around that 10%, that was a great deal. So it just depends on your area too. Galen, lumberjack. Matt, I think I saw an article in Business Insider about you. Am you correct? Am I correct? Am you correct? Words are hard. I am disappointment in your grammar. Business Insider did some articles on Michael Zuber, Todd Baldwin, the lumberjack landlord, and me. And they did 3 or 4 on pretty much all of us. They just did another one on Todd last week. They really got heavy into the real estate market. And if you really want some entertainment, go to the Reddit anti-work group and look up Matt and mine's name, because we made a fan club there. Capitalism is evil. Landlords are the devil. It was creative. There was some pretty good comments in there. Very entertaining. Tom, howdy. 300 units in New Hampshire. Tom, you're late, but we'll catch up. Awesome. I usually, when I catch a live stream late, I go back to the beginning, set it on like 1.5 sound, and play till it catches up, which probably wouldn't happen today. Ultimate bargains. Like my FYI, I focus mostly on the debt coverage ratio, dscr. DCR? Okay. Debt service coverage ratio, because it is a measure of tolerating recessionary pressure on income and expenses. The bigger the DCR, the better. Cool. Loco Eddie. Wife getting frustrated with property still going over ask in our area. What are y'all seeing out there? That is a good question. Each market is totally different. In my area, we're starting to see most properties, like most, I would say like almost half of what I've looked at, more than 10 days on market. Where 2 or 3 months ago, 3 days on market seemed like a record. So each market is different. Yours is the one that matters. If they're still going for over asking, then the things that are in your control is don't go over asking unless you still get the yield you're looking for. That's the only time. Because remember, the list price, it's just a price that made sense to the seller. Like that's what they were hoping to get. It's their wish price. Might be over, might be worth more, might be worth less. It's worth what you can get your yield out of it for. Speed. In a market where they're going fast and they're going over asking, speed is your best friend, because a lot of us think as an investor, here's how I would sell. I want as many eyes on my property as possible, and then I want to go with the strongest deal, most likely to close at the best price. Like we process the whole thing. You'll never know. None of us will ever know why they're selling. What the seller is, whether they were an investor, they inherited it, they tried it out and didn't like it, they're going through a divorce, they had something change with their work where they have to sell. Like we'll never know the real details. No matter what someone tells us the story is, it's the story they want us to know. So some sellers can't believe that they're going to get the number that their agent has recommended. They bought it for $200,000. They've owned it for 30 years, and the seller's saying you're going to get $500,000 for this. So they list it for $500,000, and the seller's thinking, no, there's no way. That's over twice what I paid for it. Who would do that? You make an asking price offer within 30 minutes, and they're like, oh, holy wow, somebody made the offer. Take it quick. Now you have the sunk cost theory. They have taken the time to accept your offer, and even better offers might come in later. They're not going to drop your offer. It's very rare that would ever happen, and go with a better deal once you're accepted. So speed is your friend. Sometimes you can increase your earnest money the seller thinks that's free money if you just walk away. It's only free money if you don't have an appraisal clause and an inspection clause. If you have an inspection clause, you actually have a period of days where you get to decide if you want the property or not and still keep your earnest money. So those are some of the things that I've done to try to get the deal. And I have like got one last year in a market where everything was going over asking and everything was waiving contingencies and everyone said don't do anything. I got an asking price offer with contingencies that was negotiated down $2,500 because they had the sunk cost theory going on. So you have that going on in your market. That's still how you invest. As you see days on market increase and as you see over asking offers decrease, that's where we start to shift how we invest. I'm picking 10 days on market. I'm not looking at anything that's been on the MLS less than 10 days. Once it hits 10 days, I'll look, and now I have negotiating power. That is a seller that might need to sell. If they don't need to sell, they're just going to leave it up there and never take an offer, or they'll take it down. If they need to sell and they didn't in 10 days, now I can go, okay, what's the number that makes sense for me? And those are the offers that I'm making. I made like 4 offers in the last week and a half. And I think as days on market improve, get longer, that's going to happen more and more. So you need to know what's going on in your local market. That dictates how you're going to invest. And there's a strategy for each type of market. And they're both just as effective. You need to find the best deal you can in your market, not the best deal of the century. Hope that helps. Galen. Lumberjack landlord. It was lumberjack landlord, 117 units currently. Galen. No, you have to say it would not happen today. Exactly. Where are you located? Loco Eddie. Good question. Savannah area. Savannah is Georgia, right? Days on market are increasing, but no budge on price. Yeah, we're not seeing a budge on price either. The wish prices are still coming out there at stupid numbers, but I'm making offers that make sense to me as days on market increase. Galen, lumberjack landlord, you started in Boston with your wife and then moved because it was expensive. Ultimate bargains. Mr. Seller, if you can be flexible on payment terms, then I can offer full value. Mr. Seller, which is more important to you, how much money you get or when you get your money? Maybe. Remember, so right there, you're speaking into existence the options. Instead of saying, I would like to buy your house. You want 1.1 million. I'm offering you 1.15. To do that, I would like seller financing at 1 or 2% interest, whatever one you pick, over 30 years. Just speak, this is the option that works best for me. You are educating them instead of saying, hey, you have options. You can. I go, here's your option if it's a regular price loan, but here's your selling price, seller financing offer. But you're right. Once you're having that conversation, that back and forth, what matters to you? That's a good way to word it. How much or when? Galen, Georgia is nuts at the moment. I think it will be one of the markets where the market would not cool off, but rather keep going up. There are a lot of those. I think the lumberjacks is still going up too. Our state motto is live free or die. Nice. Oliver, did you get your 4-plex offer? If so, please, could you share what was your winning offering? I have not yet. I talked about it a little bit ago, so it's a repeat for anybody who's been here long enough. They wanted 1,030,000. I offered 990. They said they wanted to net $1 million. I said, well, then you should have sold in November or December before interest rates went up. So they haven't accepted it. They have now lowered it to 1,015,000, and I'm still not budging. 990 is the highest it makes sense to me. If it's still on in a week, I might reach back out, but I'm also going to check with my lenders and see where rates are, because my offer might turn into 950 if rates went up. We'll see. Michelle is asking if she can email the lumberjack, and Matt, you can put your email in the chat if you want, because you have links available. You are able to do links now. Dom, howdy. How much in reserves do you keep for each property? I keep it simpler than thinking each property. Some people do that. I'll do 4% of my entire portfolio, or I'll do 5,000 per property. I think when you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 units, I had up to 4 properties. I kept a reserve of $10,000. That's enough to cover a roof. That's enough to cover a couple of water heaters, a couple of months without rent. Murphy's Law. If something can go wrong, it's going to. So I wanted reserves for that. Lenders will also require that you have at least 3 months of mortgages for all of the mortgages that you have in reserves. If you don't want to have that much cash laying around, they will recognize 50% of a retirement account as a reserve, because if you pay taxes and penalty, you're going to have about 50% left. They might lower that in a time where the market is doing what it's doing now, and they might say you only have 40% reserve there because lenders it's their money, they get to make the rules. So that's the reserves that are required. I have had one lender say, we like you to have 4% of your overall portfolio's net worth in reserves. Too much math for me. What is 4% of 5 million? It's $200,000 in reserve. That's ridiculous. So I wouldn't be using that lender currently. I don't even know if I got the math right, but Matt will correct me if I didn't. Up to 7 units, I kept 10,000. But once my units got bigger, and my portfolio got bigger, I had more units, more properties. Murphy's fourth corollary is if any sequence of events can go wrong, they will, and in the worst possible order. So I wanted to have more reserves to handle more than one roof at a time, a couple water heaters, or more not paying their rent. So I increased it to 30,000. Round numbers. This is what made sense. Small portfolio, 10,000, larger portfolio, 30. I'm also working and have a good W-2 job. I make 6 figures in my W-2 job. I didn't when I started. I was making $17 an hour. That's not 6 figures. Is that even figures? And now I'm making 6 figures. So I keep 30 and I'm comfortable. Sometime between 3 years from now and tomorrow, in that timeline, I am going to stop working. But not today. When I stop working, I will probably double my reserve, or at least turn it into 50,000, because I don't have that consistent W-2 income to recover losses if I need them, or for issues that come up. So while working, I have less reserves than I will when I stop working. That's my reserves in a nutshell. I do have a video that breaks down more of the nuance on my channel called How Much in Reserves. So if you look for that. Lumberjack Landlord. Got his email there. Nice. CJ, what pistol do you daily carry for? Again, looking at a Glock 19, pretty like huge. Even Glock's 36 subcompact is tiny, is huge. So I like the Sig Sauer SAS anti-snag. The carry that I use now is just a Smith & Wesson revolver. I like revolvers for personal carry because even in law enforcement, you train that when you have a bad round or you have a jam, it is tap, rack, reshoot, right? With a revolver, whenever you have a round that doesn't work, it is pull the trigger. The next round will work. So for personal protection, since the rule of gunfighting is 3 rounds, 3 seconds, 3 feet, a pocket carry revolver is plenty for me. I'm generally not going to be shooting somebody at 30 feet with a hostage. So that's what I carry. I have several Glocks. I have 2 Glock 21s. I have a Glock. I have 2. I have now 1 Glock 36. I gave one away. Great, very accurate. I would totally, at 30 feet, shoot somebody holding a hostage with no hesitation whatsoever. That's how accurate I am, or how accurate I feel Glocks are. If that's over you and I shoot you, I'm sorry. But for conceal carry, it's comfort, because I'm a pocket carrier. It's just literally, it's got the pocket sheath, so you get a cloth pocket so that you don't get the definition of a firearm shaped into your pants, and smooth to go in and out so nothing catches. I also do like the triggerless so that there's nothing to snag on. The Sig Sauer anti-snag 9mm is also has nothing on top of the snag. There's no sights. Even the button to release the magazine is almost recessed. It's pretty close to flat. So I like to be able to pull it out quickly. There you go. That was our off-topic firearms question for the day. Ryan, howdy. Would you describe your area as suburban? Most of mine are. So I invest between Tacoma and Olympia and Washington. One is in Tumwater, which is a little past Olympia. But I'm not in Tacoma or Olympia. I don't want to be inside city limits. There's only one city that I'm actually in the city limits, and I hate it. Never invest in Lakewood, Washington. Burn your buildings to the ground. Screw that town. They have a rental agency that you have to pay every year to have a rental there who gets to come and inspect your property. And they send out a 19-year-old who has never worked in the field, doesn't know anything about the industry, and made my tenant switch out a Disney Princess light cover because it didn't match the other ones in the building. So that's the one place I don't like. I have two properties that I would consider rural. One is in the middle of nowhere on a lake. One is in a town that is, I think, has a population of under 200. They might be around 200 now, but that town is on the outskirts side of a military base. So all the tenants there are usually military who don't want to live in the big cities. So they're still right from the base, but they're in what you would call really rural. But the rest are almost all in housing areas. And one thing I really like to do is I don't buy duplex, triplex, or fourplex in a subdivision of small multifamily. So there were times in the 70s and 80s when a contractor would go out and buy 20 acres and then put in however many 40 duplexes. I don't like those kind of areas. I like single family house. My triplex is a single family house and a duplex built there, and then single family house, single family. So my appreciation is based on what's going on with the single family houses around there. My tenant turnover is very low because almost everyone there, it's 50-50 owner renter. It's not 100% tenant base. So I have better luck with low tenant turnover in an area where it's small multifamily in a single family area instead of duplex in the middle of 10 duplexes. I have one that's in that kind of location. I haven't had turnover with it yet, but it's a concern I have. Now we're back to Michelle. Thank you. Lumberjack, I am doing cash from sale of one rental, only one I have, doing a 1031, calculated 15% for vacancy, maintenance, and repairs. Taxes, 22 from the co-site, and left with 7%-ish cash flow. So 7% was your cash flow. So that's your cash on cash return. I think, because it's not 7% of what you're getting goes to you. It's if you're investing $100,000 and you make $7,000 a year in profit, that's a 7% cash on cash return. Email Matt, have him walk you through the steps on that. Oliver, are you still going through Chandler David Smith's course? How are you liking it so far? I am signed up. I have not taken the course. It's self-paced, and I've had a crazy month. We had a random 4-campus random VA audit come in. Another one of those reasons why somewhere between 3 years from now and tomorrow, I will not be working anymore. But yeah, no, so I can't give an opinion on that yet. I will though, but not today. And then Galen took back a message to make me lose some sleep. Dom, that consistent W-2 is definitely helping with my reserves. Yes, it helps with your reserves, makes lending easier, at least till you get those 10 mortgages in your name, helps you sleep at night. So there are benefits to having a job for now, not forever, just for now. Okay, finally we got that, but not today. Yeah, it's really hard to work those into a live stream, but I will try. And then let me know if you guys liked the live stream where I was walking around and went down the slides, because I might do that again on Thursday. I'm going to check for water this time, though. Ultimate bargains. Michelle, I suggest considering getting an option to buy the 1031 replacement property. Then you can sell and buy on the same day, not worrying about meeting the IRS strict deadlines. I think that could be a reverse 1031 where you buy the property and then sell and use the money 31 so you don't pay taxes on the gains. Kefas. Howdy. Made it. Very happy one. Nice. Michelle, Lumberjack, or Ultimate Bargains. My property closed 7/6 and I'm trying to go under contract on new subject to. Cool. Ultimate Bargains, thanks. Have a good night. Thank you, Galen. And we're coming up on 3 hours. We're doing good, Galen. As always, informational and funny. Thank you for your time. And until next time, thank you for coming. Loco Eddie, considering building a home and keeping my existing home as the rental, which would cash flow approximately $800 or 14%. How would you think through that to see if it makes sense to build new? So I'm not sure if I would build because it's such a long play on when cash flow starts to happen. Once you have a portfolio and we've reached financial freedom, I think building looks a little more attractive. Um, yeah, there are quite a bit of reasons why I wouldn't look at new builds. In the next year, though, as right now we're seeing new build finishing, and then because of interest rates, buyers are vanishing. We're going to see possibly some deals come out on new builds that they were expecting to sell for one or $200,000 more than what they're actually going to sell for. So this might be the time to really watch the new builds to see if deals pop up. Uh, it's not something that I've done. I prefer 20 to 40-year-old properties. They cash flow easier. They're easier to maintain. I like Class C so that I don't have super high end rents. So that if I have a vacancy, I have a $3,000 or $4,000 mortgage to do. I have a duplex where if I have both sides vacant, $1,300 mortgage to do there. So I just prefer that breakup and age of property. Normally, the way I've looked at builds is if home prices went up so high that building was cheaper, it looked like the way to go. But home prices went up so high, and the supply chain issues and labor problems made the cost of building go up as high or higher, right? So that to me, that was still time to buy. But now that we've seen that shift where buyers might have gone away and we might see new builds with special offers, time to consider that. Larry, love the live streams from the slides. Okay. What's the best way to start investing with 10 to 12,000? There are a couple of videos on my channel on how to start investing in real estate. One is the 6 steps to invest. It was like the very first video I did almost, and then one was a recent live stream. And before buying a rental, what do? Like the 6 steps. They're almost always the same. So if you've saved 10 to 12, continue saving because as you save, and saving is multiple steps. It's increasing your income. That's overtime, switching companies for a raise, a side hustle. It's decreasing your spending. So you're maybe the suggestion is actually going to be how you get into a house hack with your 10 to 12,000. And the third thing is to, minimize your expenses so you can save and invest the difference. 10 to 12 is a starting point. You continue to save. So how much you can add every month, because I suggest using a 3% down owner occupied loan to buy a single family house with an ADU. That's the easiest way to get started in real estate, to get a tenant and to reduce or eliminate your housing costs, because the person renting either the main house or the ADU is going to cover most or more than your mortgage. So now that money that you were paying for housing can be added to your savings rate. And then time. You need the element of time. It's going to take you another year or two to save up the next down payment, rinse and repeat that 2 or 3 times. It sucks. Saving sucks. Moving sucks. Having people live on your property in another house that doesn't even touch yours sucks. But it is the quickest, easiest way to get into real estate and get to that point where the income snowball kicks in and you have a couple of cash flowing assets that produce money so you can save and invest faster and you don't have to work overtime. You don't have to keep growing a side hustle. You won't always have to house hack. It's just for now. If you're not familiar with house hacking, it is the largest thing you can do to impact your savings rate. Housing is, there's 2 big expenses that everybody has, and then the others can fluctuate. The 2 biggest expenses you're going to have is taxes and housing. Then we have healthcare, transportation, food, entertainment, like all the other things that you can kind of manipulate. To older used car is going to be better than a newer car with full insurance and more expensive registration and all those issues that you have. Less maintenance issues, but so you're going to balance that. But if you can reduce or eliminate your housing costs, some people do this by renting out rooms in their house. I mean, think about how many millions of people have roommates. When we're in college, when we first move out of our parents, we're totally fine with somebody helping us pay someone else's mortgage. But when we buy a house, all of a sudden we don't want someone else to help us pay the mortgage. So we don't want roommates now because we own it. What's the difference? That renting out the rooms is one option. The other one is buying that house with an ADU, or buying a house with a basement that you can build with a separate entrance where you never even interact with them. You have it totally closed off. Split level house divided the same way. Duplex, triplex, or fourplex with a 3.5% down FHA loan. So you can use FHA to get into a fourplex, live in one unit, and actually be paid. I'm making profit $2,500 a month living in this unit of a fourplex. That doesn't suck. Makes it so much easier to save for the next investment. And this is my second house hack. I house hacked once in a duplex, and now I'm in a fourplex. The duplex is now cash flowing. So that's how I suggest, if you only have 10 to 20,000, or 10 to 12,000, keep saving. Start looking at what the properties are like in your area. Figure out a house hack, because it's low down payment options, best interest rates. Interest rates are lower for where you live because you're less likely to give up the place you live than a rental. So since you're less risk to the lenders, they give you a better interest rate. Might not have been what you want to hear, but it is the easiest way, and what I did to reach financial freedom in less than 10 years, to where I never have to work again in my life. Since 2018, I haven't had to have a job. It makes a life a lot more interesting. That was a great question. Thank you. Moderator says, hit the like button or he will hit you with the monkey wrench. And what I'm saying in the live chats now on Zubers and Mats is every time you hit the like button, an angel gets its wings. The build would become my primary at that point, right? So, but then you have a mortgage on a new build, which is a large expense, which makes it hard to save for the next investment property, especially if you only have one other rental. I'm not saying live house hacking or live in the older, dumpier place forever, but for 5 years or so, if you're willing to do that, after the income snowball kicks in and you buy that brand new built house and you get to live and design it how you want it, that won't delay your financial freedom as much as it will now. Hypno, howdy. For a complete beginner to real estate investing, would you recommend any other courses beside Michael Zuber's course? Courses. The BiggerPockets boot camps are good. It's a 10-week program where you really get involved with a cohort. So you get kind of like that motivation of other people going through the steps. And they do, each week is a different topic where you pick a market, you learn how to calculate, you learn how to run the numbers, it's tenant screening, like picking a strategy, like all the things broken down. And it's less than 500. Then Zubers is less than 500. It's the $5,000 for a weekend courses that no one should take. You'd be better putting $5,000 into a deal and losing it. You're going to learn more. I am taking Chandler David Smith's course so that I can do a review. I'm signed up. I need to actually find the time to do it. If you want multifamily strategy investing, there's a YouTube channel called Cody and Christian's Multifamily Investing. They have over 100 units, and I think Cody's about to turn 22. So like they've figured out seller financing, multifamily acquisition. I don't know of any other courses. There's so much material that's for free, and so I'm technically anti-course. One of the reasons why I don't have a course is I don't have enough material. There's 222 videos on my channel. You should watch 222 videos. You know everything I know. And I do live streams, I do interviews, I do all this kind of stuff. I answer questions, right? So if I had a course right now, it would be hypocritical. Be hypocritical. When I have 500 videos or 1,000 videos, and I go, okay, so I have a ton of content, but if you want like the course, the core 20, this is the chronological order, like Michael Zuber's course. If you want, this is he's got over 7,000 videos on his channel. So taking his course totally makes sense, because you're going to get refined down to the chronological order that you would invest in, presented in teaching format. Same with BiggerPockets. Thousands of hours of content, right? They've got the money show, the real estate show, the rookie show, all the smaller content that they put out. To watch all of that would take you 2 or 3 years. Pay a couple $100, get their 12-week boot camp, and go through. These are the steps in chronological order that help you learn the process. I don't know that I have any others that I would recommend. YouTube University is probably your best bet outside of those two so far. Someday, but not today, I will have a course, and it will be, I have too much content for me to think the average person should sit down and binge through 300, 500, 700 videos. Here's the 20 hours in chronological order of exactly how to pick your strategy, pick your market, refine it, grow your, like all the things to do that. I'm not there yet, but those two are one rental at a time and BiggerPockets. Loco, thank you. CJ, Zuber or Chandler David Smith. No, there you go. Army Phaser. Howdy. You're 3 hours late, but we're still going. 3 hours and 4 minutes, and I am almost out of drink. That's why the voice is still working. Brown Sugar Babe. Howdy. Appreciate your answer. Thank you. Thank you. I missed your name at the top. Howdy. That was the best way to start with 10 to 12,000. Okay, cool. Jamil, howdy. Which video games do you play? Okay, we're at the 3 hour point. Currently, Zenith in VR. Good cardio. There's a sword character that makes you pretty much exercise while you're playing. I've played New World. It's been a while. My daughter plays World of Warcraft, so they have an expansion coming out I might try. I'm looking forward to Elysia that's coming out on VR. I mostly use VR because it's the best way to get cardio. You can play Beat Saber for a half an hour, and I think it's better cardio than you can get doing almost anything else. Dawn, thank you. Don't forget to hit the like button. Jason, hypnocritical being critical of hippos. Hypocritical, exactly. Thank you. Appreciate your advice. Cool. Hendrik, howdy. Okay, I'm going to give it just another minute where you just went over the 3 hour mark. Again, I want to thank everybody who comes and hangs out at these live streams. The question you ask might be the thing that sparks the conversation that helps somebody else close a deal, or know what to study, or start the next thing, or reach financial freedom. And I think it's great. I think I really like doing content with the three amigos. Michael Zuber, Matt the Lumberjack Landlord, and me. We all invest very differently. We have different goals, different size portfolio goals, different backgrounds. So the information that we have can help different people from different starting points. The next live stream would be Saturday morning at 8 o'clock. Michael Zuber does a live stream on YouTube, and then 9 o'clock for his students in a private Facebook session. And then the Lumberjack Landlord does his live streams Sunday morning, 11:30 Eastern or 8:30 Western. We've made it 3 hours. Where's my vodka? My vodka's there. I was almost done. I have to make sure that the glass is empty before I don't think it's time to order a new bottle yet. Vodka, alien vodka. And my glass is almost empty. So cheers to everybody. I want to say to everybody, thank you very much for coming to my live stream. This one lasted a little over 3 hours. And I saw one person say to do the slides live streams. Okay, so I probably will do that Thursday. We'll see. It also depends on what the weather does. Ryan, howdy. If inherited tenants currently pay cash, how would you get them to switch payment method that is more convenient to you? I have just told them, in my introduction letter, these are the ways that I accept payments, and it lists out Zelle, because I want 3 things to happen when I accept rent from the tenants. First, I want it to be easy on the tenants. I don't want to do anything that causes tenant turnover. I do have one tenant that pays in cash, but it comes glitter covered, so I don't ask any questions. And I'm okay with that. But the second thing is I wanted to leave a paper trail. So that's the problem with cash. So I have to give a receipt. It's in the fourplex that I live in. So while I'm there, I'm okay with it. Once I move out, I'm probably going to change that too. You need to go with Zelle, Cash App, Apple Pay, Venmo, PayPal, ACH, check. And I have a tenant who pays in checks. She writes 6 months worth of checks. I pick them up. So every 6 months, we see each other once for like 5 minutes. I grab the next 6 months checks. So easy on the tenant. Several different options that leave a paper trail. And the third thing is I want to save myself a trip to the bank. So that's the goal whenever I'm collecting rent. I would give them several options and find out which one worked best for them and say cash is not an option. Awesome. Adios. Bienvenidos. I hope everybody has a week full of awesome. Until my next video, thanks for coming to my Dion Talk.